Hello everyone, how's it going? So there's this YouTuber I follow, his name is Nevrox. He does these incredible documentary style videos similar to Gamers with a V. And he did one for Halo Infinite, for Multiverses, Dragon Age the Veilguard, so many games. They're really well done. And he has a video out called How Marathon Lost 92% of its players. Now I haven't watched this yet, but as someone who actively played Marathon, I don't really do it as much as I used to because of just the low player count and a lot of other factors. I want to see with someone who has all the details condensed into one video of why this game just utterly failed. I know a lot of people will point to a lot of simple factors like the fact that it's an extraction shooter, it didn't launch with a lot of content, and there are a lot of things that went into it, but it's better to have a condensed video that goes through all of it to show, hey, these are why this game didn't succeed. Because at its core, it has so many good things going for it. It has great combat, incredible sci-fi universe, rampant AIs, aliens, artificial human bodies that you transfer your conscious into, corporations that literally own the copyright to life and death, where you are just basically a slave being pushed into this conveyor belt of death and rebirth. It's really well done in that context, but there's so many things that went into this game that was just very questionable. But let's get into the video.
Marathon was supposed to be Bungie's next great franchise, the forever game that would carry the studio beyond Destiny. Instead, it lost 92% of its players in 5 months, and while the company kept calling the game important, half the studio was cut in a single day.
Damn.
And Bungie saw this coming, because for 5 years...
Dude, when the game director leaves, it's over. Like, I know there are a lot of staff that leave after a turnover, but when you're literally the person leading the ship... Yeah, that does not bode well, especially to investors. There's actually an interesting theory, I forgot where I heard this, that Sony is purposely allowing this game to just fumble so they can create a credible argument of why they are going to absorb Bungie as a supporting studio within PlayStation Studios. Because at its core, Marathon, Destiny, they all have similar factors, even if you put Halo into it, but Halo is not made by Bungie anymore, and most of the people who worked on Halo are gone, even though Bungie says there are still a lot of people who did work on Halo. I digress. The shooting for this game is really well done, but the fact is that they put it into a game that didn't have a lot of sustainability. So that's kind of the theory, that they're making this game fail on purpose so they can have a good argument to make to investors of why they paid so much for this studio and now why they're going to turn it into a support studio. Like, it hasn't happened yet, but it definitely feels like it's going that way.
Its own developers said the players Marathon was built for did not exist.
Yes, I remember this was during the alpha.
Of how that prophecy came true.
The alpha was literally that.
3 decades earlier, with the name itself. In December 1994, a small Chicago studio released a science fiction shooter for the Macintosh. The studio was Bungie, the lead programmer was Jason Jones, one of its co-founders, and the game was called Marathon. Marathon was so popular that players got a trilogy of it, one game a year through 1996.
Dude, can you remember that? That's something that used to happen commonly. Like, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era had so many incredible games, and they all released within the same console generation. We got literally the Mass Effect trilogy, we got the Gears of War trilogy, we got the Resistance trilogy, so many games that were released during that one era, and now we're lucky if we even get one game per era. It's just like, game budgets have ballooned so much and become such a red tape affair, like what Arshar Sharma said about how many, there were like 16 managers working at Bethesda. I'm like, how the hell do you have, like, it's insanity. Do you really need that many managers? Can you imagine if you're like a low-end programmer and you need to like put up like state that there's something wrong with the game, like a bug report, to a QA tester, and you have to go through multiple managers just to get that report down the road? It's ridiculous. Like, what is wrong with these game companies? It almost feels like they're just hiring just to balloon these budgets so they can make more money off the company that's publishing the title. Look, I'm not a fan of publishers, but when you ask yourself, why do you have so many managers? These are questions you need to start asking. Why? Why are all these people in managerial positions? Why do you need all these people in order to sound off on basic reports and basic information about what's going on with the game?
Marathon is the series that made Bungie matter, years before Halo made Bungie famous. And Bungie never stopped wanting to make another one. the proof is written into one of the most important contracts in gaming history. Because for most of the
and
last
look what happened
2
to Halo
decades,
now.
Marathon was legally not allowed to exist. In April 2010, Bungie signed the biggest development deal the industry had ever seen. 10 years and $500 million.
Blizzard wasn't the only video game company butting heads with Kotick. A decade earlier, Activision had signed a whopping $500 million deal with Bungie, the storied maker of Halo series, to create a new science fiction fantasy called Destiny. The contract was for an annualized schedule that was in line with Kotick's unusual cadence, new releases every fall alternating between full games and expansions. The thing is, if they kept Destiny the way that Destiny 1 launched, I think it would have been a lot more sustainable. Like, Destiny 2 was not making money. Like, it was literally I think one of the people at Bungie said this, you're running at full sprint constantly trying to create new content. If they just kept it like you just buy expansions as you play the game, similar with Destiny 1, because remember, with Destiny 1, you can buy the entire game for one flat price. This includes the core game with the Black Garden up to the Taken King expansion. And you just get it for like on a good sales day for $5. Every raid, every weapon, everything. But with Destiny 2, you buy the entire series and you don't get all the content. And I see so many people saying BS like, oh, it's not compatible with Destiny 2 anymore and there was a lawsuit. Doesn't matter. I don't care what people say about that. It should have been in the game. Like, I literally have a physical edition of Destiny 2. Why the hell can I pop it in and not play the Red War expansion? Well, it's not even the expansion. It's literally the first base game adventure for Destiny 2. Like, just play it offline. But, you know, that's unheard of nowadays. So, it's just a lot of ridiculous stuff. They got too money hungry. Like, you could have kept the Eververse, all that stuff. I don't care. But release expansions while allowing players to access the stuff that they purchased. I know it's wild when you think about that, but recently with Sony going full digital, along with Google apparently removing well, it's not even apparent, it's confirmed, they removed people's access to the Lord of the Rings trilogy because they lost the rights to it, despite the fact this person purchased the content. It's just like 10 years ago, this would be inconceivable. There would be riots. Remember the Xbox One original? Like, this is what's happening now, what they wanted to do 10 years ago. And it's, I don't know, like, it's getting worse.
$, with Activision publishing a brand new franchise called Destiny. The contract behind that deal was generous beyond anything the business had produced. Deep inside that contract sits a clause almost nobody would read for years. In it, Bungie carved out a
The parties agreed that Marathon shall be specifically excluded from the restrictions of this section, provided that unless otherwise approved by Activision, licensor shall not publish or commercially release itself or grant any rights to any company for the purpose of developing, publishing, or commercially releasing Marathon until at least $375 million. Oh my god, that is so many zeros. And the cumulative operating income has been achieved. Activision have a right of the first negotiation to publish and distribute Marathon in accordance with the procedures applicable to future Destiny games. Like, I just find this funny because Bungie made it very apparent that they wanted to remain a private company for so long. They didn't want to be bought by Microsoft, so they wouldn't just be at Halo Studios, which was what 343 became, and they're still garbage. But yeah, and then they decided to sell themselves to basically, like, they own the rights to Destiny, don't get me wrong, it's just that you went from Microsoft to Activision and you had all these stipulations. Like, what would be the difference if Microsoft was the one who owned you? I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's some sort of legal issue that comes with this. If maybe Marty might tell, if I ask him on Twitter, he tends to be very forthright about a lot of information as long as it's not NDA, and he talks to a lot of people. But it's very confusing to me that, you know, you have all these stipulations for Activision Blizzard, but you refuse to be bought out by Microsoft, which was probably for the best, all things considered. I don't know, like, it's a lot of stuff that's just, like, questionable.
Single exception for itself. A prototype project, and the document names it in writing. A future action shooter product, tentatively known as Marathon. Then came the conditions. Bungie was allowed to put no more than 5% of its people on Marathon, and Bungie was forbidden from publishing Marathon at all until Destiny had earned $375 million in operating income, meaning actual profit, not just money coming in.
So basically one Call of Duty game. Like, even though Call of Duty has been in the toilet for many years, it still sells very well. Granted, Black Ops 6 was the worst selling Call of Duty game of all time, even though it sold so many copies and made them a boatload of money, but the fact that it was the worst selling, yeah. But damn, the team grows by 25%. The company, Bungie staff, Marathon, however it likes.
If Destiny reached 750 million, the Marathon team could grow to a quarter of the company.
So this game was in development for a very long time.
Bungie staffed the Marathon team however it liked. And even then, Activision kept for itself the first right to negotiate publishing it. 16 years before Marathon launched, its existence was a reward tier in another game's contract. That document was never meant to
So
be
this
public.
game was literally
The
their
only reason
passion
anyone can
project.
read it is a courtroom. In 2012, 2 previous Call of Duty executives sued Activision.
Yeah, I remember
A Los
this.
Angeles judge ordered the Bungie contract unsealed as a trial exhibit. Keep that.
That was because of the royalties for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Dude, Activision Blizzard. God, that company. It's so ironic when you learn about the history about Activision of what they became. Like, so many companies had such a incredible ethos before, like, years later when they got corrupted. It's almost like the flood infected them. Eventually the infection form found its way into the body, and then boom, you're fighting a combat form all of a sudden.
5% clause in your head because it is going to shadow Marathon's fate for the next 16 years. Destiny shipped, and what happened to Destiny from here on matters as much to Marathon as anything Marathon ever did, because the two games' fates were intertwined right from the start.
And
Destiny became a commercial giant that never stopped being a creative headache. Its launch scored a 77 from critics against the 90 the contract paid bonuses on, and the relationship with Activision soured year by year.
To be fair, Destiny 1 was a trash fire. When it first came out, everyone was excited for this game because these are the guys who made Halo. They were talking about this incredible sci-fi epic that they were making where you would go to the moon, different planets, find unique guns, and then when people played the game, it was nothing like that. It was basically just a horde shooter. You go from room to room, literally just killing hordes of enemies back to back until eventually you get to the finale where you fight just like a supercharged version of, I believe it was the Minotaur from the Vex. It was basically just a recycled enemy, and then the game ended. Literally, that was it. Like, the raid content was not substantial. There was really no reason to keep playing. It was boring as hell. Like, a lot of people were very disappointed with Destiny. It wasn't until the Taken King expansion came out where they pulled the No Man's Sky. This was before even No Man's Sky, where they rehauled the entire system, gave us an incredible expansion with Oryx. Like, everything about the game was fixed. They literally took the feedback, like with Hideo Kojima with Death Stranding Director's Cut, said, okay, what didn't people like? Alright, let's fix those things. And then, guess what? Just like with Death Stranding Director's Cut or No Man's Sky's Revival, Final Fantasy XIV, or Star Wars Battlefront 2, they listened to the fan base, and they delivered something absolutely incredible. It's so much so that people were calling it, like, Destiny's finally back. So all those things about Destiny when it first launched was completely valid as someone who was there from day one.
Until in early 2019, Bungie negotiated its way out of the deal, choosing independence over building a
They apparently had champagne
Destiny 3.
bottles.
Somewhere in that wind down around
Uncorked.
2018, the old Marathon name finally came off the shelf. The man who reached for it had spent 2 decades building Bungie's biggest worlds, and what he wanted to build with Marathon looked nothing like the game that eventually shipped. His name was Christopher Barrett. He joined Bungie in 1999, worked across Myth, Halo and Destiny, and rose to become one of the studio's most senior creative leaders.
Here's another fact of what made Bungie different from Bungie now today's Myth. When it launched, had a game-breaking bug. I forgot what the bug was specifically. I think it was dealing with memory. And the thing is, Bungie had 1 or 2 options. They could issue a patch through their website where someone had to download it, but gets real during that age of time. A lot of people didn't have the same access to information as we do today, so a lot of people would have been unaware of that. Instead, Bungie recalled all the copies of Myth and then installed the patch afterward. It nearly bankrupted the company. Just to put into perspective how gamer first this company was. Like, now they're a shell of their former selves. Let's just state fact for what it is.
With a seat on Bungie's own board, few people inside the building carried more history with the studio's old worlds. The Marathon that Barrett wanted to build was not an extraction shooter. Years later, after he was gone and everything had gone public, he described the original inspiration in his own words.
The original inspiration was not Tarkov or extraction shooter, it was the Dark Age of Camelot, a tense living world experience filled with co-op player stories and potential dangers of other players. Wrote Barrett in a post on social media, extraction was just a convenient mechanic leveraged to create a 15-game loop where the player had the same session and have multiple opportunities to succeed and fail. Okay, so for people who don't know, Bungie has this philosophy of 15 minutes of fun. That's why Halo matches are 10 to 15 minutes. So you can just hop into a match, have fun, and that's it. Like, it's absolutely incredible, and it was literally the sauce on their very incredible burger when it came to Halo. But this actually sounds really cool. It actually reminds me of the original idea for Anthem. For those who don't know, Anthem was also supposed to be this survival game where you would drop onto a planet and then it would be a hostile survival experience where you would try and gather supplies in a co-op experience and try and extract out with whatever you had until it became the Iron Man-esque shooter that absolutely bombed because they were trying to compete with Destiny. But I don't know, this sounds like a really cool idea. Like, if you pepper in aliens, rampancy AIs, Durandal, all this cool stuff that, I don't know, I think this idea sounds so much cooler.
It was not Tarkov or extraction shooters, he wrote. It was Dark Age of Camelot, a tense living world filled with co-op player stories and the potential danger of other players. His design goals read like a manifesto from another timeline. He wanted persistent servers and a player-driven living world, with survival systems layered on top, and puzzles and mysteries that echoed the dreaming city from Destiny. And he had one goal he wrote down in 2 words: no heroes. Every character in his marathon would be unique, built by you, never picked from a roster. To be clear, extraction was part of his pitch, but
that sounds so freaking awesome. Like, you're creating your own custom character as you play the game, like an RPG like Dragon Age Origins or Baldur's Gate. Dude! that means, or like World of Warcraft, but like you're building your own set of armor as you go through the game. Dude, that is... And the idea of no heroes, you're just a scavenger, a mercenary looking to get as much capital as possible. Dude, I don't know, that sounds freaking badass. Like, I like the idea of a no hero story where you're just like some dude playing through the game. I like those stories where you're just an ordinary person like Ethan Winters or the Rookie from Halo ODST. You're not Master Chief, you're not the hero for Eldon, you're not Ripley from Alien, you're just some normal person who, if they die, they're just going to be a pile of bodies that you would see when you're walking through as the main character. You know, the background NPCs that you see in towns and cities and stuff like that. I like playing as that character because it shows that, hey, at any time you can die. Like, there are actual risks. You know Master Chief is going to survive to the end, but if you play this ordinary person who's probably not... Like, there was a game that actually did try something like that. It was called Zombie U from Ubisoft, of all games, where if your character died, you play as a brand new character, and you can actually find your NPC in the world as an infected. Granted, you still went through the same path but it was a cool, novel idea, and I just like playing as those characters, like Ethan Winters, where you didn't know in the end of Resident Evil 7 if he was going to survive. This was a nobody, a systems engineer who went to go save the woman he loved.
As the wrapper, not the product. It was simply a convenient way to slice that living world into 15-minute sessions where you could win or lose something real. And the win conditions were to be written for the mass audience, so the game could feel worthy of your time without you needing to outshoot every stranger in the lobby. That is one account of where this game came from.
So it's basically like Destiny,
the man who pitched it,
where you see players going in and out.
Comes from reporting after things fell apart, and it is far less romantic. In the second version, the idea grew out of Bungie leadership playing Escape from Tarkov, and one senior figure, described in reporting as a good old boy of the studio, meaning an old guard insider whose ideas did not get questioned, pushed the concept until it became Bungie's biggest bet outside Destiny. 2 origin stories sit on the record, and they do not describe the same game.
It sounds like this person played that game, said it was cool, let's turn it into our own. No, don't do that. That almost never ends well. I mean, sometimes it ends well. Like, Dead Space actually was that game. Like, originally, the concept of Dead Space changed because of Resident Evil 4, and to me, for the better. Like, Dead Space is one of the best survival horror games not made by Japanese game developers. But, yeah, Resident Evil 4 influenced Dead Space creation, so it can do something right, but based on what we got with Marathon, maybe that wasn't the best idea. They should have kept the original idea, which seemed like a hybrid between survival games and the Destiny drop-in, drop-outs experience.
Marathon would spend the next 6 years trapped between them. The version that went forward was the second one. Around 2020, with the Activision divorce final, and the studio fully its own boss, Marathon moved from an idea into real production as a PvP extraction game. And almost immediately, the warning started. From the first year of production, developers were telling leadership what would and would not work in this design.
Marathon was originally pitched by higher up a good old boy Bungie leadership, and as far as back 5 years ago, devs would tell him what would and wouldn't work and would often ignore. Many said previously that they needed some sort of P versus E component. All of this between necessary asset auditing, a rework marketing campaign, shift in playlist plans, screams of a game that wouldn't come out in 4 months, or at least shouldn't be, though there are no indications of that yet. Dude, based on what the game we got, oh my god. This is word to word, literally a precog prediction of what happened and what they should have not done. But they said there are no indications that this was really true of one-to-one of what happened, but...
And they were often ignored. Many of them kept repeating one specific warning. Marathon needed a PvE component, some way for regular players, the people who actually show up for Bungie games, to play against the world instead of being hunted by strangers. Leadership heard that warning for 5 straight years. You already know what they did with it.
Yeah, nothing.
Those warnings never left the building, because something much bigger swallowed everyone's attention. Bungie itself went up for sale, and the deal that came out of that sale would end up steering Marathon's fate harder than any design argument ever could. The first serious suitor was Microsoft, which had reportedly talked with Bungie as far back as 2020, and the talks died on price. The revealing part is what Microsoft's own dealmakers wrote down the following year. In an internal briefing from April 2021, later dragged into the open by a court fight, Bungie sat on Microsoft's final watch list of studios worth buying. The briefing praised Bungie's established ability to ship and scale games, and it flagged exactly one risk: a high burn rate. Bungie was burning through cash to keep Destiny 2 running, while it funded everything else it wanted to build.
However, Microsoft did not cite specific risks regarding Bungie. It was high burn rate. No, not burnout rate. With players getting tired of the game and quitting, burnout refers to cash, with Bungie burning through in order to maintain Destiny 2 as a live game, producing lots of content in addition to funding all other projects, which include Marathon and Matter still to come. Like, again, they should have just released Destiny 2 as a traditional game with expansions that came out over time. This live service epidemic just completely, like, right now it's collapsing. No one has any faith in live service. When Fortnite and Destiny 2, like Destiny 2 has ceased production altogether and the IP is on ice, but when Fortnite, the king of live services, is struggling, you know things are bad. Like, no one wants a live service game. Anytime you use the word live service, like, remember that Marvel's Avengers game? We have a 10-year plan with the Marvel Avenger IP. That game turned out to be so mediocre and boring that it literally died within a year. And ironically, it also killed an actual good game, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. That game made by Crystal Dynamics was actually really good. Like, I would say it's better than Marvel Spider-Man 2. Not in gameplay, but in story, definitely. But, it's just a lot of stuff. Like, honestly, it was also Microsoft's fault. This is when Phil Spencer was the head honcho, and he was just buying up studios in order to supplement Game Pass, which has turned out to be a huge mistake in terms of managing the Xbox brand. Like, it's good for the consumer, not so much good for the developers. Seeing that Ninja Theory, Double Fine, so many studios have either been closed or forced to go independent because Microsoft said either buy yourself back or we're closing you down. There are so many factors that come to that, and Sony literally panic purchased Bungie. Let's just state it for what it is. They saw Microsoft, and Microsoft is bigger than Sony. They were buying all these companies. They bought Activision Blizzard and Zeta Max Media, which is, by extension, they got the biggest first-person shooter catalog out of anyone. Yeah, like Sony just panic buyed the Bungie, and they said, what do you want for your company? They said it, and then they literally signed away whatever money that was slipped underneath the note. So I don't think Microsoft would have ever been able to buy Bungie, considering how much they bought Activision Blizzard and all these other companies, which caused the leadership of Microsoft to literally look at Xbox and say, we gave you all this money, you better make us not regret it. And now we're seeing the aftermath with Asha Sharma, the layoffs, the closures, Sony also being like completely anal, like with all their decisions, with the failed live services of Concord, the biggest live service failure of all time, not to mention closing down so many studios like Blue Point Games because they were developing a God of War live service. Like, it's just like all of this just stems from the fact Microsoft was buying all these companies and Sony panicked by Bungie. But then again, it also came out, and I hope he touches on this, that the only reason that Bungie is still around is because Sony bought them. Like, Bungie was literally in the red. If it wasn't for Sony, they probably wouldn't be around right now.
Including Marathon. Microsoft looked at that math and walked away. Sony looked at the same math and wrote a check. In January of 2022, Sony announced it was buying Bungie for $3.6 billion.
Because there was a panic.
By the time the deal closed that July, the total had settled at roughly $3.7 billion. One former Bungie community manager later described the studio side of it in 3 words: an emergency acquisition. The size of that check's going to matter, because a purchase that big has to earn itself back.
It literally saved
Sony had ideas about
Bungie.
Which game would do the earning. But for Marathon's story, the structure of that money matters even more than the size, because this structure later decides who pays when the bet goes wrong. Roughly $2.5 billion was the actual purchase. The remaining $1.179 billion was retention money for the people inside the studio, deferred payments that Sony's own filings describe as conditional upon their continuous employment. In plain terms, almost a third of the price would only ever reach a Bungie employee if that employee was still there when the money came due. It evaporated for anyone who left, and for anyone who was cut.
There is the secret word, cut. So by time that the checks were about to be printed and signed to those retention employees, guess who got fired?
On paper, nothing about Bungie was supposed to change.
And not fired,
Sony's
also
announcement
left.
promised in writing that Bungie would continue to operate independently, run by its own board and its own management. One report, citing sources inside the studio, later described the other side of that promise. If Bungie missed its financial targets by enough, Sony could dissolve that board and take full control.
Which is, again, what I said at the beginning of the video. I think this is why they're allowing Marathon to operate on, like, last time I checked, it was like 5,000 players right now, which is abysmal. No matter what anyone says, 5,000 players on Steam, you can probably triple that number. That's what you get a decent amount for all the other platforms, even though Paul Tassi has stated that the majority of players on playing Marathon are on PC. You're looking at 15,000 players. That is pathetic. There is, like, there are games that got shut down for far less than that. So in this consideration, it's just like, hey, your game is failing. This is the only game you're working on. Destiny 2 is no longer getting updates, even though it has 3 times the number of players. We're just going to turn you into a support studio, and we're going to take full control of you. Because I'm pretty sure, like, one of the major things why Bungie didn't want to go to Microsoft was because they wouldn't be able to retain their independence. They were very keen on that. So maybe that's the reason why they didn't sell to Microsoft. That Microsoft was like, hey, we would be the ones in control.
And if you want to know what Sony believed it was buying, read the announcement's own description of the studio. It celebrates Bungie's 3 decades of beloved franchises, and the first franchise it names, ahead of Myth and Halo and Destiny, is Marathon. A game which, at that moment, existed as an early prototype and a 26-year-old memory. 10 months after the Sony deal closed, the world finally got to see Marathon on May 24th, 2023, at Sony's PlayStation Showcase, Bungie revealed Marathon, its first completely new project in more than a decade. The trailer was gorgeous, a cast of synthetic runners in a graphic design style nothing else in gaming looked like. And then Bungie described what the game actually was: a sci-fi PvP extraction shooter. That one sentence did the damage.
Yeah.
The dominant reaction from day one across Bungie's own community was that this was the wrong genre wearing a beloved name. The old Marathon games were story shooters, remembered most for their writing, and a cast of unstable artificial intelligence. This one was coming back as a game where you drop in, loot, and get hunted by strangers. And the most requested version of Marathon, a single-player revival, was ruled out in the same breath, because Barrett himself wrote that Marathon was designed from the start as a PvP-focused game and would not have a single-player campaign.
Biggest
to be
mistake.
fair to him, the version Barrett described still carried pieces of his dream. He promised a world full of persistent, evolving zones where players create their own journey. There was talk of crews discovering an artifact that, once activated, opens a new area of the map for every player on the server. And it was Bungie's job, he said, to create the fun and fantasy, not the busy work and tedium. But while the Marathon trailer did its rounds, the company behind it was starting to crack. If you were a Destiny player in 2023, you already felt it. Lightfall had landed to the worst reception in years, and inside the building, Destiny 2's revenue was running 45% below the year's plan.
It was also because of when you come off the Witch Queen DLC, which was absolutely incredible. Like, that was what people wanted. They wanted dark sci-fi from Bungie, and that's what they loved about the Taken King, is what they loved about the Witch Queen. Lightfall was literally this Fortnite-esque TikTok millennial expansion that everyone was like, what the hell is this? Like, it just went so opposite in the tone of the Witch Queen that people were just like, we didn't want this. Like, we wanted more of what the Witch Queen provided. And it just, again, it showed that they weren't listening to fans. Like, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that expansion.
On October 30th, Bungie cut about 100 people after staff had been repeatedly assured that the acquisition meant no layoffs. And every person cut left their unvested acquisition shares behind. Sony noticed the numbers too. In February 2024, Hiroki Totoki, the Sony executive who chairs its PlayStation business, told investors he had visited Bungie and seen room for improvement, specifically in how the studio spent money and how it owned its development timelines. It was phrased politely, and it was a warning. Then came the strangest twist of the whole pre-launch story. In March 2024, a designer named Joe Ziegler, the man who had directed Valorant at Riot Games before joining Bungie, posted a cheerful update to social media. He wrote, "Fun update. For the last 9 months, I have been working on Marathon as the game director." 9 months. The director of Bungie's most important new game had been replaced the previous summer, and nobody outside the studio knew. Even inside, staff had been told Barrett was simply on leave. Bungie had also deleted...
That's a good sign. Hey, you know the boss who's heading this project that has been in secret development for many years, that's had so many changes gone through it? Yeah, that guy's out, and we just hired someone secretly to work on the game that he's been developing for many years. Yeah, that's really a good sign. And especially, look, I have nothing against Ziegler. I think he really did it the best he could. But Valorant is not Marathon. Like, literally, when you take the source material for this and look at Valorant's gameplay, you're just like, these two clash in such a different way. Like, one's a free-to-play game that's meant to compete with Counter-Strike. This is a game that is a story-heavy sci-fi epic about rogue AIs, alien species, humanity trying to break through the evolutionary, the artificial evolution line that has been bestowed to us by Mother Nature, to try and go beyond that and create something that's brand new that transcends life and death. But in this situation, like, it's just, when you play Marathon, I played only 2 games of Valorant, you definitely see the two mirror each other in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to the gameplay. Like, as much as I hate to say it, but yeah, I did. It's wild, man.
Its own 2023 Marathon developer video without explanation. Barrett was in it. The explanation arrived more than a year after the handover. Reporting revealed that Barrett had been formally fired in the spring of 2024, months after being pulled off the game. after an investigation into complaints from at least 8 female employees about inappropriate behaviour.
Oh yeah, I
Barrett
forgot
denied
about that.
wrongdoing, saying he never understood his communications to be unwanted, and that he was truly sorry if anyone felt otherwise. In
Which means
December,
he just
sued
admitted
Bungie
fault
and
to it.
Sony for more than
So that was probably
$200
the
million,
best.
and the largest specific line in that lawsuit is worth remembering.
Barrett asked for not less than $200 million total damages, $45 million plus interest, so that's due to under retention agreement plus the defamation damages and punitive damage totaling at $100 million, along with additional statutory damages. And oh my freaking god!
He claimed over $45 million due under the retention agreements. The pool built to keep people at Bungie was now the thing its fired director was suing to collect.
Yeah.
While the lawyers loaded up, the studio kept feeding Marathon. In June 2024, Bungie cancelled Payback, the Destiny spin-off it had in development, and moved most of that team onto Marathon. Inside Bungie, Marathon was becoming the golden child, fed first while the other children starved, and the company's future was narrowing to a single bet.
That's why, I'm so confused. You're the crown and jewel of your company, Destiny, that's feeding all the bills. You're just allowing it to die while you're starting all these other projects. Shouldn't you focus on the game that requires attention? And look, yeah, you can't just put people onto a project and expect it to get better, but at the same time, maybe not start investing money into stuff that you really don't have capital for right now. Not to mention, Sony's watching you like a hawk right now. You have a lawsuit defamation going on, and it's just last thing you need is a new project. Just focus on what you can and do the best with what you have. It's like what Microsoft did, when they purchased all these studios, they couldn't manage all of them. And this was actually very, I guess it's expected, but at the same time surprising, when you find out Minecraft was the one keeping all of this alive. Microsoft just came out and said, yeah, the only reason all of this is still operating is because Minecraft still sells incredibly well and does incredibly well. I mean, for obvious reasons, Minecraft is an incredible experience. It's transcended just traditional gaming. It's also used as a learning tool, communication tool. A lot of different factors play into Minecraft. So it's not surprising that Steve is literally holding up the boulder that is Microsoft and Xbox. Not Microsoft, but Xbox. So it's just very confusing. What the fuck is management doing here?
Then on July 31st, 2024, the bill came due because the money had kept deteriorating, with Destiny 2 still missing its targets, and the incubation projects Parsons would soon blame having spread the studio too thin. 220 roles eliminated, 17% of the studio. Another 155 people were moved out of Bungie and into Sony itself. In 1 year, Bungie had gone from more than 1,400 people to about 850.
They lost almost half their people because of just bad management and money management. What the hell?
Pete Parsons, the chief executive, who'd been at Bungie for 2 decades and now chaired its board, wrote the memo himself. "We were overly ambitious," he said. "Our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red. Some staff found out they had been cut by reading the blog post."
Holy.
And the same memo told the survivors exactly where the future now lived, because in Parsons' words, the studio would focus development efforts entirely on Destiny and Marathon. Two of Destiny's most recognisable leaders, Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, left the same week. And 2 days after the layoffs, reporting surfaced an uncomfortable detail about the man who signed them. Over the previous 2 years, Parsons had allegedly spent at least $2.4 million winning auctions for vintage cars, including a Porsche at $201,000 in the month, right after the first round of cuts.
To be fair, that was his money. He can spend it on whatever he wants. And I believe Marty did an interview with the Ackman, Marty O'Donnell, and he said Pete Parsons always wanted fuck you money. So he's free to spend his money as he wants. I know that sounds very crass. It looks really bad when you're showing off an entire vintage car collection while everyone's losing their livelihoods, getting kicked off health insurance and all that stuff. But it's his money. He can do what he wants with it. I know that sounds cold, but I used to work in a doctor's office where the doctor literally drove exotic cars. His suits probably cost more than I've made in my entire lifetime, but he owned the practice. He made the money, he can do whatever he wants with it, and if he has to fire a few people, because I only worked there for a couple of months, but a couple of people did get fired. He's free to do that. Like, I know, again, it sounds very cruel and everything, but your personal fund is not the company money. But at the same time, like I said, it looks really bad when people are losing their livelihoods, losing their jobs, and you're showing this extravagant car collection. It's like saying, look at all the incredible food I'm eating while someone is literally starving to death. So, or like literally Scrooge McDuck levels of this cruelty. Not DuckTales Scrooge McDuck, like whenever he's in a movie special. But yeah, look, I'm not trying to condone his behavior. Like, he should have manage the company better. Like, he is to blame here. He is a manager, didn't manage the company correctly, people lost their jobs. That's on him. I'm never going to excuse that behavior, but personal expenses, you can do whatever you want with that. That's probably going to make me sound like such a bad person, but I strongly believe in that. If you make your money, you can do whatever you want with it. But when it comes to people losing their jobs, that is on you. You should have managed the company better, and they would still have their jobs.
Bungie developers responded with fury, and for the wider community, this marked the start of a lasting distrust of Bungie's senior leadership. Marathon was now Bungie's designated hard carry, the one game expected to drag the entire studio back to safety. Bungie had cancelled a Destiny spin-off for it, cut a fifth of the studio around it, and lost the director who dreamed it up.
Less
all before the public
enemy variety.
Real...
Like, this game had less enemy variety than Destiny 1 at launch. And they put so much money into all of this. And most of the time you just fight robots and ticks. Like, there's just one alien, the compiler. I'm still flabbergasted by that. How the fuck do you spend this much money and this much time and most of the enemies are just robots and ticks?
Real gameplay. That changed on April 12th, 2025, when Bungie put Marathon back on stage with a price, $40, and a launch date. The man presenting it was Ziegler, and buried in that day's announcements with no fanfare at all was an admission of how much of the original pitch had died with the handover. Remember, Barrett had promised a world full of persistent, evolving zones. Ziegler now explained that in early playtests, the maps had acted like a persistent world, where you could drop in and out of the same map server multiple times. Players found it unfair and unpredictable, he said, so it was gone. In his words, the version of Marathon they settled on gave everyone a fresh start with every match. The living world had become a lobby. What replaced it was a menu of runners, playable characters with names and fixed abilities, which fans of a certain fired director might have recognised as the...
It's literally Valorant! It's a hero shooter! Like, at least the original idea was unique. This one is literally just like any generic free-to-play shooter. Look, I know a lot of people say this game should have launched free-to-play, not $40. If a game is good enough, people will pay for it. Look at Overwatch. I think Overwatch is one of the best examples of that. It was a multiplayer-only game that cost $60. People bought it. Why? Because it was an incredibly good game. People had a ton of fun with it. It didn't even have a lot of content. Like, Overwatch at launch, they didn't have a lot of stuff. But the fact that it was just a fun game to play. Like, all these characters you can choose from. Just go wild. Pick whoever you want and just have a good time. That was the whole point of Overwatch. It was a party game where you just go around having fun. Like with Halo. Halo was never a competitive game. It was an incredible single-player campaign with a party mode multiplayer. Yes, you had Slayer, big team battle, but most of the fun for Halo came from literally the custom game modes. I think a lot of us who remember Halo 2 spend more time playing games like Infection and like just going into the map and seeing if there's the golden warthog that we can collect. Like, I spent so much time with those rumors with other players who just said, hey, this is how you get the golden warthog, and we will drop into the map and do all these like stupid things that we read on the internet on GameFAQs.com. Like, that was the fun. Like, it wasn't even the competitive modes. It was just going in and doing crap and seeing what we could get away with. Like, is there really a Kilimanjaro medal? Everyone, like, I remember this. Everyone lined up. Like, we got, like, I forgot how many players, but we had a full lobby and everyone just lined up. Someone got a sniper rifle and we shot and he's like, it's real! It's a real medal! Like, stuff like that was the meat and potatoes of the game. It was just funny, stupid, crazy stuff, like in Halo 3 with Speed Halo and stuff like that. But this, it's literally made by an executive in a boardroom. They don't understand fun. They don't understand why gamers do stupid things like, hey, what would happen if we put a bunch of fusion coils beneath a tank and just blow it up? That's something a gamer would think of. They'll be like, oh, that sounds awesome, let's try it.
Exact thing. His old two-word rule, no heroes, had forbidden. There was one more design decision hiding in plain sight, and it turned out to be the most important one Bungie ever made. Marathon was designed for trios, 3-person crews matched against 5 other teams of strangers on maps built around team fights. If you wanted to play alone, the game would feed you into someone else's war.
Dude, I hate 3-player things. Like, I think 4 players need to be the standard. Maybe it's just me. I think Nintendo 64 kind of like set the standard for 4 players. Like, yes, the PlayStation 1 had a multi-tap expansion where you could put it into the controller slot and you would get 4 players, but I think the idea of 4 players and just got cemented in people's mind because of the Nintendo 64. Like, the idea you just bring 4 controllers, you play Mario Party, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros. Like, 3 players, it's just like, it feels like you're missing something all the time when you have that. Like, you're just missing that extra person to create a complete team. Like, Alien Fireteam Elite 2 fixed that. They were like, hey, everyone wants 4-player co-op, so we're going to put 4-player co-op into this. So, yeah, also Xbox had 4-player co-op. That was freaking amazing.
The community saw the trio's design for what it was and made the joke immediately. Bungie had built a $40 game on the assumption that gamers have 2 friends with the same schedule. 11 days later, the public finally touched it. The closed alpha ran from April 23rd to May 4th in exactly 2 countries, the United States and Canada. 18 players per map.
And it was boring.
Runs capped around 25 minutes, and no proximity chat in a game Bungie kept describing as a social experience.
The excuse they had for the proximity chat not being in the game is because of toxicity. I'm like, this is an extraction shooter. Your entire job is to go around, kill people, and take their stuff. Like, Halo is what popularized the teabag. We don't want toxic players. Like, you're one of the key franchises you ever made, one of the most key IPs that made Xbox what it is, popularized the teabag. Oh my god.
What the testers found was stranger than a broken game. A Bungie shooter with immaculate gun feel wrapped around an extraction loop that did not want to be there. Loot was mostly junk. Backpacks filled up in minutes. The smartest squads stacked the invisibility runner and the wall hack runner because information beat shooting. Halfway through the test, Bungie ripped out the PC aim assist entirely, changing how the game felt mid-alpha, and the players who came to test it left. By the end of the 11 days, the alpha had sunk to roughly 1/5 of its starting players and stayed there, even after a big mid-alpha patch. The press verdict screamed boredom and a hollow world.
Yep, bored.
As for the casual players, they were turned off by the entire idea of losing their gear to strangers. And in any live service game, casual players are the majority, the people who keep the lights on and the developers fed. Worse still, the comparison that would haunt Marathon for the rest of its life was born in those same 2 weeks.
This is why skill-based matchmaking is so important to get right. In this case, like, I get what they were going for, but the problem is that when players feel unrewarded for all the experience they put into playing a game, they're just going to stop playing. Like, at the end of the day, Marathon literally didn't have anything to keep players playing. The progression system was boring. The optional contracts were obtusely difficult, especially for the higher end contracts for, like, Nona. So it's just like, I can't believe none of them thought about that. Like, Halo Reach, even if you lost, you still gained experience, new armor, new everything. So it's just confusing that they couldn't think of this. Like, even the cosmetics in this game were just bland and boring. You couldn't customize individual shell parts. Like, you could do that in Halo Reach. I always use Halo Reach as an example because it really was Bungie's most optimized game. It had an incredible progression system. It had a diverse selection of content. It had single player, co-op, forge, theater, competitive multiplayer, different custom modes that you could share with other players, file share, and theater mode where you can revisit great moments and record it and see it from every perspective from every player. It had so many things, all for the base price of $60. Like, yet in this game, you don't have half the stuff that game has. Like, why in the hell can't I customize individual parts of my shell with different colorizations and stuff like that? It just makes no sense.
Arc Raiders, Another extraction shooter from another studio ran its own test in the same window, and the initial impression for Arc Raiders seemed to fare better than
I
that
never
of
played
Marathon.
Arc Raiders, so I can't really
An early preview of the trend
test it
that
out.
will solidify in player numbers down the line. Ask the players why, and the answer in the threads was always some version of the same thing. The other game welcomed average players, and Marathon fed on them. Every warning the developers had raised privately for 5 years was now measurable. Bungie's response was to keep marching towards September. Within 2 weeks, that plan, and very nearly the studio itself, would be blown apart by a single social media post. On May 15th, 2025, a Scottish independent designer named Fern Hook, known online as Anti-Real, posted a set of side-by-side images. One side showed poster designs she had published in 2017. The other showed Marathon's environment art.
This wasn't the first
Her
time
designs
Bungie
appeared
plagiarized
nearly wholesale.
even.
And in at least one texture, her scratched-out artist tag was still legible in the game files. The meme the subreddit had celebrated was part of the same stolen work. Her statement had no anger left in it, just exhaustion. Bungie was not obligated to hire her, she wrote, even while building a game that drew overwhelmingly from the design language she had spent a decade refining. But clearly her work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game, without pay or attribution. She added that she had lost count of how many times a major company had found it easier to imitate or steal her work than to write her an email. It took Bungie less than 24 hours to respond, and the response made everything worse. The studio confirmed the unauthorized use and blamed a former Bungie artist.
They always
who
blame
included
someone
her work
else
in a texture sheet, adding that the current art team had known nothing about it. Maybe that read as plausible the first time. The problem is that this was the fourth time in 4 years Bungie had been caught shipping art it did not own, across 4 separate incidents and 4 different artists, from a Destiny expansion in 2021 to another in 2023 to a Nerf blaster in 2024.
And don't forget, I believe a lot of the art team from Bungie followed Anti-Real on Twitter. So it was just like, I remember like I remember the comment section for the live stream. The art director would look like he was just so dead and done with everything. On top of it, it was like flooded with plagiarism will make us God.
Once is a rogue employee, 4 times starts to look like a pipeline. And one more detail made the "we did not know" defense even harder to swallow. The next evening, a Friday, Bungie put Ziegler and Cross in front of a camera for an apology stream.
Yep. Just
Cross
look at
read
that
a prepared
face.
statement and looked, in the community's own description, like a man who had not slept in weeks. He insisted the majority of the assets were original and that the tainted set was very small. Yet the audit running behind the scenes was sweeping enough that Bungie could not show the game on its own stream, and the marketing campaign was being rebuilt from zero. The chat was merciless the entire hour. And by the
Plagiarism
end
will
of it,
make me
the
God.
community's verdict on the whole evening was that Bungie really messed up this time. Bungie's own subreddit split in half over the scandal, defenders insisting the style predated one artist, everyone else reading 4 incidents as a pattern. But even the defense conceded the cost in plain terms.
Like, even with the benefit of the doubt, say they were not aware of this stuff and it was genuinely a surprise, as management, it is your responsibility. No matter what, like, whatever your employees do, whether you work at a McDonald's, Walmart, Verizon as an electrical engineer, as manager, you're responsible for your employees. This happened, you gotta take responsibility.
Bungie already had an uphill battle selling this game, and it had just become a mountain, and the scandal compounded a collapse already underway, because in the days after the alpha, the marketing plan had been thrown out, a June trailer and pre-order push were pulled, and the planned August public beta shrank into a vague roadmap of playtests. And the scandal did something subtler too. It cracked the studio open for the press, and what leaked out over the following days was bleaker than any stolen poster. Reporting from inside the building described a team in free fall, and it put on the record, for the first time, how long the people making Marathon had been shouting into the void. This is when the world learned who the pitch had really come from, a small circle of senior insiders whose ideas did not get questioned, that developers had been warning them for 5 years, and that the plea for some sort of PvE mode had been repeated and ignored the entire time. The Marathon team, roughly 300 people, while the rest of...
It's like I said, management was the problem. Like, I don't understand. You have all these people telling you, hey, this is a mistake. Do this instead. We're all telling you this is going to be a bad idea. Like, how much hubris do you have to have that you just said, everyone else is wrong, I am right, even though not just the employees are telling you this, the players. You literally had an alpha, you had builds of this game being tested, and everyone was telling you the same thing. Like, at some point, you have to look around the room and read it for what it was. Like, there are rare instances, like, the only thing that comes to my head right now is Atreus from God of War. I remember Cory Barlog said he wanted his head to be shaved like Kratos. Kratos, I believe Kratos is bald. I don't know if he shaves his head, but he wanted to shave Atreus' head, and one of the art directors, she was like, no, we have to have him with hair, and that was the right call. Atreus would have looked weird with a shaved head. Like, he looks way better with hair. But, yeah, it's just like, you saw the writing on the wall, you still refuse to look reality in the face, and now it's biting you in the butt.
Bungie kept Destiny alive, now got to watch their private frustrations become headlines. People were leaving the company voluntarily over the negative press. By the third week of May, the outside verdict read like an obituary. Marathon, the argument went, was aimed between two audiences and would land on neither. It was too punishing for the millions who loved Bungie's approachable shooters, and not special enough to pull the Extraction faithful away from the games they already lived in. The sharpest version of the diagnosis called it mass incompetence and declared Marathon as good as dead. That was the state of Bungie's 20-year dream project, 4 months from its release date. Sony's leadership chose that exact moment to project confidence. On June 13th, Herman Hulst, the executive who runs PlayStation's entire studio business, stood in front of investors and addressed the Concord disaster, the hero shooter Sony had pulled off the market the previous year.
The biggest failure in entertainment history,
he said, to make sure it was not going to make the same mistakes again.
You made the same mistakes again.
Coverage of the briefing summed up the message in 4 words. It remains on track. 4 days later, Bungie delayed Marathon indefinitely. There was no new date, only a promise of an update in the fall.
Everything is
and
fine.
A mission in Bungie's own
Don't
words.
look at the burning house.
The team needed more time to craft Marathon into the game that truly reflects your passion. Read the improvement list Bungie attached.
Up in survival game, more challenging, engaging enemies. Like the AI, I will say the UESC is a good enemy. It's just that, why are you only fighting robots? Like, just robots and ticks. I keep addressing this because it's so stupid. Like, I think it's because they, in the original Marathon trilogy, you played as a Battleroid, which is basically a Spartan. And, well, they can kill compilers left and right. They are literally walking death machines. And a shell, not the same thing. Like, yeah, we've seen players solo the compiler with one shell, but in reality, it's supposed to take a team of highly coordinated shells in order to take down one compiler. So you're basically just tinfoil. You're a walking martyr. You're meant to go in there and die, like, no matter what. But at the same time, that does not translate to fun. Like, there are certain things you could have done to try and change this. Like, one good idea they had was the idea that the anomaly was affecting damaged and destroyed shells. And you know what they did with it? They made one kamikaze enemy with it. I'm like, you could have made it that there were infected shells walking around using the abilities of the shells. Like an assassin is walking across the field using cloaking, sentinels leaving traps everywhere. Like, there are so many things you could have done, and you decided on none of it. Like, look at this list. A better experience with solo and duos, prox chat. The fact that they have to add prox chat, oh my god. Oh my god.
And you can hear the alpha feedback echoing back, one item at a time. More challenging enemies, more rewarding runs, a darker tone, a better experience for solo players and duos, and proximity chat.
The tone wasn't the problem. Like, everyone loved the, like, lore of this game. They liked the shooting, they liked that stuff. You're addressing not the actual issues. Like, what is the point of playing this game if you lose everything? And
almost line for line, it was the list players had been shouting since April. What happened next inside Marathon's subreddit looks bizarre from the outside and makes perfect sense from the inside. The indefinite delay of the studio's most important game in a decade landed as good news. and threads celebrated it as a victory, because after those playtests, more time was the sanest thing Bungie could buy. The dominant read was relief, because the delay post proved for the first time that Bungie was capable of hearing the two demands the community had been repeating: solo play and proximity chat. Players had watched the studio refuse to budge on both for a year. Watching it finally bend felt like hope. Outside the...
It wasn't hope. They were desperate. They saw everything that was transpiring. They realized, hey, the things that we were so egotistical about, oh yeah, those things are not going to translate to sales. We need to get players in. What do they want? Oh, they want this. All right, let's put it in the game. They want that. It's like you're giving the customer what they want, and now you're surprised they're interested in your product. Wow. This must be a new marketing thing.
The fan bubble, the same announcement read as a company in serious trouble. Both reads were about to be tested against the money, because the delay had just moved Marathon's fate onto Sony's earnings calendar. On August 7th, 2025, 3 years and 3 weeks after Sony's deal closed, the polite fiction of Bungie's independence ended on an earnings call. The voice delivering the news was Lin Tao, Sony's chief financial officer, and her language was the kind that sounds gentle and means everything. Bungie's independence, she said, is getting lighter, which is corporate language for being taken away piece by piece.
Yeah.
The direction, in her words, was for Bungie to become part of PlayStation Studios. By then, it was barely even news inside the building.
They're going to become one with the grave mind.
Publishing, human resources, legal, whole departments had already been folded into Sony over the previous year and a half. On Marathon, she said 2 things that investors filed away. We are now fixing the problems, so we believe this launch will happen. And if this launch is cancelled, we need to do the revision of the valuation. Strip away the finance speak. And the message was simple. Marathon was now holding up the paper value of the entire acquisition. And if it never shipped, Sony's accountants would finally have to write down what Bungie was actually worth. 2 weeks later, the man who built modern Bungie left it.
Eventually, it did
happen. On
happen.
August 21st, Pete Parsons stepped down after more than 2 decades.
So you can enjoy his vintage cars.
The honour of a lifetime. Nobody replaced him. Reporting said Bungie would simply no longer have a chief executive at all. Justin Truman, a longtime Destiny leader, took over with the smaller title of studio head. 3 years after Sony promised a Bungie run by its own board and its own management, the chairman was gone and the company he chaired no longer had a chief executive at all. That fall to its credit, Bungie kept the promise it made at the delay. An October technical test shipped with solo queue and proximity chat. The 2 concessions the community had asked for, and the leaked reactions were reported as mostly positive. For a moment, the turnaround story was alive. The problem was the calendar, because while Marathon tested behind closed doors, the genre it was built to conquer got conquered by someone else. On October 30th, 2025, Arc Raiders launched at the same $40 in the same extraction genre, and then did everything Marathon had failed to do. It climbed for weeks after launch, reaching an all-time Steam peak of 481,009.
That's the thing. No genre is truly dead. If you can make a good game in the most least popular genre, people will come. It's like when people keep saying that hero shooters are dead. Well, Deadlock proved them wrong. It's literally a game that requires an invitation to play. It's from Valve. It's a closed, I believe it's still in closed testing. Literally, the game was doing laps. Why? Because it was a good game. People enjoyed it. They wanted to find a way to play it. So you make a good game, people will come. Look at Palworld. Like, I have no interest in that game, but a lot of people do. And it did incredibly well. You make a good game, people will come regardless of its genre. You make a bad game, they're not going to come.
966 players, more than 2 weeks in, higher than its own launch day. In December, it won Best Multiplayer at the Game Awards. By the following May, it had passed 16 million copies and become the best-selling game its publisher Nexon had ever released. The question of whether extraction shooters could go mainstream had been answered for good. The answer just did not involve Bungie. 11 days after Arc Raiders arrived, Sony's accountants made their first move. On the November earnings call, Sony wrote down 31.5 billion yen of Bungie's value, about $200 million, and attributed it to Destiny 2 falling short. Then Lin Tao looked ahead and named names. Marathon, which is going to be launched, and Destiny 2, if the performance does not reach what we expect, will result in a risk of impairment loss. She also confirmed that Marathon's launch was already baked into Sony's forecast for a fiscal year ending March 31st. Hold those two statements together, and that whole winter explains itself. Marathon's release date was no longer about the game being ready. It had a filing deadline. December brought one piece of genuine closure. The dispute with Anti-Real was resolved to her satisfaction, terms undisclosed, and the shipped game would carry her name in the credits as a visual design consultant. The artist Bungie had deflected onto a rogue employee was now formally part of Marathon's design history. Then, 7 weeks before launch, Bungie made a change it never explained. A January developer video walked through the 7 playable shells, and the hero names from the test era were gone. Locust became Destroyer, Void became Assassin, and the rest of the roster followed. Characters flattened into descriptive job titles. The press noticed what Bungie would not say. The hero roster of the Ziegler era, the thing Barrett's No Heroes manifesto had forbidden, was being walked back into anonymous shells at the finish line. It changed little about how the game played. As a statement about how confident this studio was,
I'm going to say something very unpopular. I think that was the best call. Like, it's because these shells aren't meant to be like codename secret thing agents or something. They're supposed to be disposable units. So giving them like generic names, even if they sound hero shooter-esque, makes them feel less impersonal. Like they're just there to exist, like you can buy them from Walmart. That's how common they are. Like my theory for the shells are literally just, they are there to die. You are literally disposable units, people of the lowest common denominator. You are put into a basically Walmart robotic body, even though, yes, they're very sophisticated stuff, but at the same time, you're there to die. You're there to find out what happened, and if you die, well, we'll just put you in another one.
Was in its own vision, though.
I kind of like that idea. It just shows how dystopian and
20 days out came the final free test.
How little human life is valued.
Everyone.
Because your consciousness can't deal with that.
143,621 people played Marathon at once on Steam, the largest crowd the game has drawn to this day. It was still smaller than the free crowd Ark Raiders had pulled for its own slam months earlier, and Marathon's crowd thinned by nearly half within 2 days.
Yeah, there you go.
But the community was euphoric, and Marathon sat in Steam's top sellers. At last. On March 5th, 2026, 26 days before Sony's fiscal year closed its books, Marathon launched. 16 years after a contract forbade it, 6 years into production, one director down, and one genre war already lost. Bungie's old dream was finally a real product you could buy for $40. What $40 bought was thinner than anyone expected.
Yeah!
3 maps and a single mode. The endgame zone, the ranked mode, and the season event were all missing, promised for later in the season.
Dude, I remember they asked reviewers to wait to hold off their reviews until the Cryo Archive launched. I was like so annoyed by that. I was like, the game launched. Whatever you launched the game as, that is what it should be reviewed on, not what you're promised to deliver on later. And even though the Cryo Archive was fun, it required like a lot of investment. You need to get enough equipment. You have to reach level 25, unlock all the factions. It's not a lot if you played at least 20 hours of Marathon, but still, that's 20 hours in order for you to access this content that they told all the reviewers to wait for. And then it got 9s and 10s, and I was just like, did we play the same game? Because, again, I'll use Halo Reach as an example. Single player, co-op, multiplayer, Theater, Forge, customizable armor, full progression system. Like, do I need to say more?
Season.
Yeah, that was $60 and this is $40, but still. $40, 3 maps. What the fuck?
The seasonal structure carried its own catch. Disclosed 2 days before launch. Every 3 months, a full wipe.
Everything.
Your gear, your contracts, your faction progress, and your level. All reset, with only cosmetics surviving.
And the reason they gave for this was they wanted to give everyone starting at 0 a chance to play with new players. I was just like, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Because you know what happened the second this went live? All the players who were already like decked out and experienced, they literally just got that same gear back almost immediately. They just started targeting the weaker players. They started getting all the equipment, and then the second the Cryo Archive went live, because it wasn't live within the first week because they had a week free weekend, they had a week promotion for the game being free. Everyone just rushed to Cryo Archive, and they literally just rushed the compiler and got all the weapons back, and guess who suffered? Literally all the new players.
Now, seasonal wipes are a tradition in extraction shooters, and the genre's veterans shrug at them. Marathon's problem was that it needed everyone else, and the average player, learning about full resets literally 2 days before launch, hears 3-month wipe and concludes, maybe this game is not for me. Players started saying exactly that out loud within weeks. Everything you built in Marathon had a scheduled demolition date. Day 1 on Steam peaked at 88,337 concurrent players. Respectable in a vacuum, except nothing about this launch happened in a vacuum. That crowd was almost 40% smaller than the free weekend had drawn a week earlier, which meant most of the people who tried Marathon for free had declined to pay for the game after their free trial. Slay the Spire 2 launched the same day at $25 and ran nearly 5 times Marathon's player count.
To be fair, those are 2 different games, 2 different genres. I don't like comparing games that have different mechanics to one another, but I get what they're trying to say. Like, this is an indie project far smaller than Bungie, and they were able to far exceed their performance. But at the same time, 2 different genres, 2 different games.
To put it into context, Marathon's launch peak came in even lower than that of Highguard, another big budget live service shooter that became an industry.
And that was free!
Still, the first 2 weeks were genuine.
To be honest, Highguard only got the appeal that it did was because Jeff Keighley pushed that game really hard, especially during the Game Awards. It was the final announcement and everything. And I think it was just the interest of people saying, why the hell did he promote this game? Is it really that good? And then once people played it and realized it was just boring, uninventive, the maps were too big, they were just like, I'm done.
Genuinely good. Steam reviews in week 1 ran close to 90% positive. The subreddit was a wall of enthusiasm, converts posting about the best extraction shooter they had ever touched. The people who bought Marathon did not dabble in it, they moved in, averaging almost 28 hours of playtime on Steam in the first 3 weeks, with a fifth of the audience blowing past 50 hours. Whatever else this story becomes, the game underneath it had real pull for the people it fit. The sourness started with the store. On day 1, players found currency packs of 1,100 coins, facing items priced at 1,120, and one-use cosmetic colour items called shaders, the exact system Destiny 2 players had once forced Bungie to abandon.
Yeah.
Bungie had promised that survival would never come down to...
Are we surprised? Like, given the long history of how they made the Eververse, I was not surprised by any of this. Like, all of it's something they've done before. They would 100% do it again if they could get away with it. They tried to get away with it again, and everyone said, wait a minute, you did this before? No. Like, it's what happened with Star Wars Battlefront 2 when EA tried to implement the Madden microtransaction system to that game. Even though Madden players have become essentially just attuned to that type of system, they just expect it, and they're just like, yeah, it's a pay-to-win game. All the microtransactions are there just to siphon millions of dollars from their entire community. For that game, they were just like, nope, not here. You can keep that with those sport titles, with those people who don't know any better or just have no choice. Here, not gonna happen. But with Marathon, like, I 100% expected that Bungie was gonna do something like this. And they did, and they only changed it because backlash. If there wasn't any backlash, they would have kept it.
How much money you spend. And technically, the store kept that promise. But a $40 game with free-to-play monetization bolted on at day 1.
Highguard was free.
As an insult. And Bungie was patching prices and difficulty within about 48 hours.
That's how you know they were just waiting for it. They were like, okay, if no one says anything, we'll keep it. But if they do, we have something ready.
Then there is the story of Marathon's review score, which is really 2 stories, and Bungie choreographed both. On launch morning, Bungie sent critics a request, described in its own guidance as not a mandate, but a suggestion. Please hold your scored reviews until you reach Cryo Archive, the pinnacle endgame zone. The catch...
If you want someone to review the game when it launches, the way that it is, launch it with the content. Don't say, oh, you gotta wait until the Cryo Archive is out. No, the game is out now. That's what we're reviewing it on. We're not talking about early access. Early access is subject to change. This is the 1.0 release. You shouldn't give them special treatment for this. Like, I didn't give them special treatment. I was like, no, I'm reviewing the game the second I get the Platinum Trophy. Granted, it took me a while to get the Platinum Trophy because it was a long grind. But once I got it, I was like, I'm reviewing it. If the Cryo Archive wasn't live, I was gonna review it regardless. Like, it's just a level of integrity.
Which is that Cryo Archive was not in the game. It arrived 15 days later, behind gates that demanded level 25, every faction unlocked, and a fortune in gear. Requirements the overwhelming majority of buyers would never meet. So the professional scores never arrived.
I disagree with that. Like, the requirements of the Cryo Archive are not as bad as they make it seem. Like, you play for like 10, 20 hours, you'll get enough. Like, at the end of the day, this is an endgame raid. It is. You're fighting the final boss, essentially. Like, that's something I do disagree with. Like, it's like in Destiny. Like, you can't go to Oryx's raid or the Witness's raid after being the core game. You have to grind your way up to get it. It's the same way with, like, games like Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft. You can't just go into the endgame raid. You have to build yourself up. So I disagree with this. Like, you can get there if you put in meaningful effort, and there is a great deal of luck that comes with it as well. Like, some players are able to get to the faction increase and credit limit very quickly. Some players are not, simply because they have bad RNG. They don't get enough good equipment. It does happen.
Arrived, and the scoreboard filled in without them. On March 14th, with only the early reviews counted, Marathon's Metacritic settled at 72. The lowest rated game Bungie had ever released. Lower than the original Destiny at launch.
Really? At 72?
Lower than every Halo.
I thought it had higher.
For 11
than that.
days, that number sat in public. Then the held reviews arrived all at once.
Oh,
and they
there
were
we go.
glowing. Major outlets landed 9s. The aggregate jumped 10 points to the low 80s. And the headlines flipped from lowest rated Bungie game ever to no longer Bungie's lowest rated game. None of those
You're no longer last place. You're just kind of last place. You don't get you get a bronze medal.
Were fake, and the case that Marathon's gunplay and presentation earned them was real. But the 82 the world now quotes was manufactured twice over. Once by the request that delayed the scores, and once by pegging them to an endgame most buyers would never see.
That's true.
Players noticed the choreography in real time, asking why a wave of reviews
The
was
compiler
suddenly appearing 3 weeks after launch.
Barely anyone has
And it was a
fought
fair
it.
question, because a good game is supposed to hook you from the first hour. Holding judgment until the end game is like being told a TV show only gets good in Season 8.
The game gets good after 200 hours, bro.
The same week the scores recovered, the sales data landed, and it explained why nobody at Sony was celebrating. Analysts measured about 1.2 million copies sold, roughly $55 million gross before microtransactions, and inside that estimate sat the number that defines this entire story. On Steam, 78.2% of Marathon's players had also played Destiny 2. After 6 years of development aimed at conquering a new audience, nearly 4 out of 5 buyers were the audience Bungie already had, wearing a different helmet.
And they
That
also,
number carries 2 poisons.
they ended up
Commercially,
hating
Marathon had
it.
not grown Bungie's business.
The thing is, he's gonna get into this, but when I put on the Marathon outfit in Destiny 2, dude, everyone hated me. They were like, every Destiny player was just like, dude, it was, I can't say the stuff they would type in text chat. It was just like, had to turn it off. It was bad.
It had mostly moved the same wallets from one Bungie game to another, and inside the community, it armed the ugliest theory in the room, that if Destiny were ever wound down, its players would have nowhere to go but Marathon, a theory the next 12 months would do nothing to disprove.
And there were people
On the other
saying
hand,
that.
The eternal optimist read the same numbers and saw a comeback.
Destiny players were like,
3
nope.
weeks after launch, industry coverage was declaring Marathon one of the year's unexpected successes.
Success.
A solid hit against the odds, with about 33,500 playing at that moment.
That's a
The
success.
charts underneath those articles told a different story.
Yeah.
Because 33,500 meant the game had already lost more than 60% of its launch crowd in 3 weeks.
That's the thing, like, this is why Steam charts are so important. It's transparency. Like, literally, you can look at it and see, like, hey, what are you talking about? This is a huge success. The player peak was, like, at 80,000, and now it's down to 30,000. How is that a success? Like, anyone with common sense can look at that and say, this is not doing well. Heck, Destiny 2 is doing way better than this. Your competitor is doing way better than this. Like...
A trajectory that is disastrous for a live service game, a product designed to be played forever. And the slide only continued through April. That is also when the money behind the game stopped being a rumour. Reporting confirmed Marathon's budget was over $200 million, likely more than $250 million, not counting the ongoing cost of running it. Set that against roughly $55 million gross.
Yeah,
and you no
exactly.
longer need an analyst to explain the mood at Sony.
Like, it's just common sense when you look at this. And honestly, $250 million? What the fuck were you guys doing? Like, there is a rumor, and honestly, I think it's just confirmation at this point, that they have all the assets and stuff ready, but they're purposely removing it and keeping it locked until, like, the seasonal updates. Like, game companies do this all the time. Oh, look at all this seasonal content update we have coming up. Do you guys have that made already, and you're just purposely artificially creating a window so people can look forward to stuff that you already have made? No? Right. We believe you.
This was a must-win that had brought in about a fifth of its build cost, after hundreds of employees had spent half a decade...
And the layoffs.
And the game the remaining players were living in had become something Bungie never intended. Marathon's lobbies became famous for one behaviour: shooting first and asking nothing. Crews hunted crews from the drop, because the map design funneled everyone toward the same fights, and the loot on the ground was worth less than the loot on your corpse.
Not to mention, like, here's the thing, like, I don't know if he's going to address this, but I will address it right now. Certain contracts only require, there are certain changes to the map depending on the contract, and very astute Marathon players would notice this the second they get into the map, because certain contracts were first person completed, they get the completion. So they will find out, oh wait, this is the map we're on where we have to get to the biolab. We are going to camp the biolab because guaranteed there are going to be players there with high-end equipment because they're only here to get to that specific point. And that's exactly what happened. It's what I did. Like, I noticed this. I was like, wait a minute, this is the map where you have to go into I forgot which, like, there's so many facilities. Like in the last map, perimeter, where you have to go into the main command area. I would just wait there and just ambush players because I knew based on just looking at where the map was operating on that that's where everyone was going to be headed.
New players got farmed by the small hardcore that remained.
Oh yeah.
And the community's own warning from a year earlier played out in real time.
Exactly.
People will tolerate difficult. They will not tolerate being served up as food night after night. The endgame steepened that food chain.
Yeah, what's the point?
Cryo-Archive, the zone the review scores had waited for, demanded so much progression that the realistic audience was estimated at the top 0.5% to 5% of players at best.
That's actually
Everyone
shocking.
else got to watch it on stream. And what they watched...
The thing is that I'm surprised it was just entering the Cryo-Archive because, like I said, the gear requirement isn't that much, and now they also have a sponsor kit that allows you a one-time entry fee into the Cryo-Archive. It was the compiler that was the problem because, like he stated, highly skilled players will literally just camp these areas that they know there are going to be other players entering, like the compiler room. There will be players who literally go into the compiler area and just wait for other players to come in. Like, that's why one of my first team quit. They were like, we got to the compiler, we stuck it out, we got the codes, we did the cryo bag, we got the DNA sequence, and then when we finally got there, there was a team waiting for us. Because they did the same exact thing, and all they were doing is waiting for us to get to the final door in the final room and killed us. They had shotguns, and yeah.
In early May, was the game's whole culture packed into one clip. A streamer used an out-of-bounds glitch to hide inside the raid's final boss room.
I remember this.
Waited for a rival crew to finish the hardest fight in the game, then ambushed them and took everything they had earned. He cheerfully described it as the most evil thing he had ever done in a game. Bungie, which had never punished out-of-bounds play before, patched the exploit within the week, mailed the victims compensation packages, and handed out a 30-day ban. All of it fed the strangest statistic of Marathon's whole run. In late April, Marathon was the single most searched game on SteamDB, the most looked up title on the biggest PC gaming database.
They were looking for just a player count.
At that same moment, it had 5,649 people actually playing, while Arc Raiders ran 6 times that.
Just look at that chart. Marathon is just literally doing this. At least with Arc Raiders, they had spikes up and down. Yes, it's still going down, but it has people who are still willing to re-download the game and play it. Like, think about this. The new digital age of gaming, the biggest thing is someone deleting their game from their download list, because games have ballooned so much in terms of size, especially games like these, that once it's deleted from their library, chances are they're never ever going to re-download that game. But the fact these players, and I guarantee you a lot of them downloaded the game, likely re-downloaded Arc Raiders just to play it again. Even more rare is that they keep it on their hard drive. Like, so many of us, I'm guaranteed, delete old games on our hard drive that we say, I'm done playing this. The fact they would keep it in their hard drive and just say, maybe I might want to play this again. But look at Marathon. Guaranteed none of them are keeping it on their hard drive. Guaranteed all of them deleted the game once they got fed up with the constant camping, the resets, everything.
Everyone was watching Marathon. Almost nobody was playing it. The internet had collectively decided this was the most interesting death in gaming, and the people watching the wreck outnumbered the people playing the game. The one bright spot of that stretch proved a point nobody at Bungie seemed ready to hear. In mid-April, an experiment called Sponsored Queue handed every player an identical free loadout. Lose it, and you lost nothing of your own. It was, in everything but name, a battle royale mode with the extraction economy switched off. And players loved it. They begged Bungie to keep it. The mode everyone praised was the one that stopped being an extraction shooter, which is about as clear as feedback gets.
Yeah.
Then came May 8th.
It was a lot of fun.
The bill for all of it arrived in Tokyo. Sony's full-year earnings landed, and buried in the presentation was the second write-down, 88.6 billion yen this time, bringing the year's total against Bungie to 120.1 billion yen, roughly $750 million, more than a fifth of what Sony had paid for the studio 4 years earlier. To put it simply, a write-down is Sony formally admitting, in its audited books, that what it bought will never earn back what was paid. An admission companies avoid until the numbers leave no choice.
Because they can't lie to their investors.
On schedule,
you can lie to your customers,
and the accounting
can't lie to your investors.
So. The CFO, who had once said a cancelled launch would force a revision of the valuation, had gotten the mechanism right and the trigger wrong. The launch happened, and the revision came anyway. When Sony's formal annual filing followed in June, its language was the coldest sentence in this entire story. Sony recognised impairment losses for the entire carrying amount of Bungie's non-financial assets, excluding goodwill. Translated out of accounting, Sony's own reports now said that everything it had bought, the projects, the technology, the studio's future output, was worth nothing on paper. The only value left standing was the Bungie name itself. And in all of those pages, one word never appears. The filings never print the word Marathon. One of the most expensive failures in gaming history is written down without ever being written down by name. The absurdity is what happened on the same call, minutes from the write-down, when Sony pledged its support for Marathon and told investors reception was strong, citing a Metacritic score of 82, which, if you recall from earlier...
Dude, are investors really this stupid? Like, I'm genuinely asking, like, do they just not know the stuff they are investing into? Like, I would assume that if you invested into a soap company, you would know how soap is made. Like, if you invest into a game company, you would look at things like SteamDB and learn about what players are saying from the hundreds of YouTube channels out there. Like, you can look at this and say, you're lying to our face. We can look up on YouTube, everything you're saying is wrong. Look, I like Marathon, but I'm just going to be harsh for what it is. Like, these were really bad decisions they made. Like, the many things that make Marathon great are the things that made Marathon great when it first started. The universe, the lore, the sci-fi aspects, the shooting, all of that. Like, the shooting in the original Marathon, yes, is dated, but it was good for its time. Even now, like, the shooting is great, the weapons look cool, but guys, when are you going to stop lying?
Was the number built by the held reviews. Bungie's answer, a week later, was the Hail Mary save plan. A director's blog titled Launch, Learnings and What's Next promised a less grindy game, better onboarding, better matchmaking, real solo and duo support, and, for the first time ever, PvE modes. One experiment soon and a full mode later.
Literally doing a 180 on everything they said players don't want. We're right, everyone else is wrong. Oh, well, we were wrong, and now we're going to put all the stuff that people said that they don't want. You think you want that, but you actually don't. Remember that incredible statement from Blizzard?
The post admitted the game was overwhelming to learn and that new players hit a wall. Compare that list against the alpha complaints from April of 2025.
The same things.
And it shows up as the same list. 14 months later, Bungie admitted, in public, nearly every structural criticism the alpha had made was valid. Which begs an uncomfortable question. What was the team doing with that list the whole time? Some of it, like proximity chat and solo queues,
That's
did
what they
get
did.
built. The structural
Everyone
half,
else was wrong.
the
We
half
were
about
right.
Who this game was for, sat untouched until the players had already left. The community's response was euphoric, and for good reason. It was the first time the studio had sounded like it understood. Julia Nardine, Marathon's creative director, spoke about knowing where the story would go over the next few years. By then, Marathon was running below 15% of its launch day peak, and 1 week after the save plan promised Marathon a future, Bungie ended Destiny's.
6,000
On May
players.
21st, 2026, Bungie announced that Destiny 2's live service was ending. One final content update on June 9th called...
Literally, this came out of nowhere. They just said, oh yeah, Destiny 2 is ending, by the way. Like, the way they dropped this news was just meteoric. They just said, yep, you know the game that literally everyone else tried to copy and tried to create their own looter shooter? Yeah, we're ending that.
Called Monument of Triumph. And then no more seasons, no more expansions ever. The servers would stay online and the game would remain playable, but the machine that had carried Bungie for a decade was being switched to idle so that everything left could point at Marathon. The same day, reporting said Bungie was planning significant layoffs and had no Destiny 3 in production. For the Destiny faithful, that announcement recast Marathon overnight.
To be honest, I can't blame Sony for this. Like, at this point, it's like, where are they going to get the funding from? Sony? Sony's going to look at them and say, you lost us nearly $1 billion. Your value has dropped. Your game that we spent so much time and money in helping you develop is literally failing, and you want us to give you money for a Destiny 3? Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, no way. Like, as much as I want Destiny 3, like, they spent so much time and money on Marathon, I can't blame Sony for saying either this succeeds or you're going to be you're going to be infused into PlayStation Studios. Like, at the end of the day, this is about money, and Bungie wasted a lot of it. They wasted a lot of goodwill, they wasted a lot of money, and they refused to listen to reality. Like, this entire video has been highlighting management just refused to listen to fans what they wanted. They wanted a single-player campaign. Heck, they could have just remade the first Marathon game. Literally remade it with updated graphics. It would have been a sure thing. Then again, a sure thing is no longer a thing because look at what happened when Halo campaign evolved. But I think a lot of us would agree that the mechanics in Marathon are good. Like, the systems are, while complicated, once they click, they are good. The shooting is strong. But I try to wrap my head around what they were thinking here. Like, the extraction mode I like, but they should have implemented a single-player campaign. It's just like, I don't know where they get their information from or where they are trying to gaslight themselves into believing this was going to be the next big thing, the next Overwatch. It's something out there.
From the studio's new game into the thing their game had been killed for. They marched onto Marathon's Steam page and said so, in hundreds of negative reviews that name-checked Destiny, though in fairness the data shows defenders answering in equal numbers. The story that stuck, the one that followed Marathon everywhere after, was that Destiny had died for this, and Marathon was dying anyway.
Yeah.
Season 2 was now 2 weeks out, and Bungie had strapped what remained of its comeback to it. In the preview push, a senior design lead named Brenton Woodrow described the ambition in words that would not survive contact with the chart. When a player starts a new season, he said, I want them to feel like we have been able to recapture the magic of week 1 of Marathon's launch.
I honestly don't even know how to comprehend how stupid that is. Your entire logic for resetting everyone's hard-earned progress is to create a fantasy where everyone recaptures the moment Marathon launched? What the hell are you talking about? Like, are you going to take away all the experience that I've gathered by playing Marathon? It doesn't matter if someone's new. I will body them because I have over 200 hours in this game. You can give me the same equipment. I will beat an entire team of new players. Like, you guys... Like...
Season 2 arrived on June 2nd, named Nightfall, with the boldest player acquisition move of Marathon's life attached. For 1 week, the full game would be free for everyone.
Well, it wasn't because it literally launched broken.
Carrying over. Bungie invited the world to crew up and start on a clean slate. And then for the first 24 hours of that week, nobody could play. The servers collapsed on the season's opening day. Veterans spent the night staring at error screens, and the free players Bungie had spent 6 years chasing got a login queue as a first impression.
When this happened during the PlayStation State of Play announcement, and the thing is, Destiny 2 still had more players, and it was still functioning better. Like, it's like, how? Like, how does that happen? The game, you sunsetted, it has more players and it's working fine. But the game that you're trying to rescue that has far less players, you have a free week and it breaks. It's like, you can't make this stuff up. It's just like, how? Like, you could just see a Sony executive coming in and just being like, how guys? Just how? Just tell me, just fix it, God. Just fix it, guys.
When the servers stabilised, the week could finally answer the question underneath this entire story.
Oh my God.
Every major decision since 2020 had assumed a huge new audience existed for this game. People who were not Bungie diehards and not Extraction veterans, waiting for the right invitation. The free week was that invitation. No $40 gate, no commitment, just the actual game, handed to anyone curious enough to click. The verdict came back in 10 days of store reviews, and it is the most damning dataset of Marathon's life. Roughly 3,000 fresh accounts, flagged as free week players, wrote reviews in that window. Only 19.3% of them recommended the game, and their median time played was 1.4 hours.
They gave it away for free, and they got the same results. Like, how many times do you need to... It's literally the SpongeBob meme. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Like, this is the most damning piece of evidence that you can show that you made the wrong choices with this game. Every single one. Like, you gave it away for free, and people still said no.
Most of them gone before their second run. The audience Marathon was trying to win over tried it once for free, and mostly said no. Numerically, the free week backfired. It stamped roughly 2,400 permanent negative reviews onto the store page in 10 days, and dragged the game into the worst week of its life, 39.4% positive. And the season's bitterest detail ran right alongside it. Season 2's opening week also carried sponsored survival, a new 1-week experiment, a cousin of April's free kit mode, but tilted toward PvE, the closest thing to what the warnings had begged for in the past. It ran its announced 7 days, June 2nd to June 9th, and vanished on schedule. And on June 12th, Cryo Archive, the end game the review scores had been held for,
I do want to make a note that the P versus E mode, while fun, it makes it very clear this game was not made for that. Like, they made this entirely for P versus P because all you're really doing is fighting it makes it very painfully clear about the poor enemy pool because you're just fighting the same robots over and over again. It's like if you fought nothing but grunts when you played Halo. It's fun for the first hour, maybe, but then eventually you're just gonna be like, this is so freaking boring. And that's the same thing that happened here. Like, everything was built on the idea that at any time you can be ambushed. And yes, that was exciting. It created that rush. but the game was not made for P versus E content. People had fun with it, but it was not going to sustain it because nothing about it was literally engaging, to the point that they constantly also hammered in features that made the game even worse to grind. Like even with the Vault Breaker content with the Cryo Archive, where you can now play the game player versus environment, even fight the compiler, you still had issues where all the equipment that you gathered were only for that roguelike mode, and there were no lore documents you could gather. Like the whole reason I was playing it, I was like, oh, if I fight the compiler, if I get all of this, I get lore documents, and they were like, nope. I was like, then why do I want to play this? Like every time they have something good, they don't go all the way. Oh yeah, and the Cryo Archive was blocked within the week that it was free, which, you know, that's great because that was done for predatory reasons. The reason they did that, and I know they'll never admit this, because they said, oh, you want to play the Cryo Archive? Well, you're going to have to buy the game for $40. Oh, we just happened to disable it for the week that it was free.
Entirely, while Bungie investigated a bug that left players unrevivable. While Season 2 stumbled through those 2 weeks, the game Bungie had sacrificed for Marathon staged one last show of force. On June 9th, Destiny 2's final content update went live, the send-off called Monument of Triumph. That day, the game being retired peaked at 167,867 players on Steam, almost double the best day Marathon has ever had.
Yeah.
Destiny 2 is not being shut down, its servers would stay on, and the game would stay playable. But this was the end of its live service, the farewell party. And the farewell party for the old game outdrew the entire lifetime of the new one, 2-1. If anyone at Sony needed a chart to explain which of Bungie's two universes players actually wanted, the players had just drawn it themselves. 16 days later came the day this whole story had been bending toward. On June 25th, 2026, the studio head stepped down, and the layoffs landed. The paperwork tells it coldest. A Washington state filing recorded 292 employees cut at Bungie's Bellevue office, with their
I thought it was a
taking legal
success.
effect on July 9th.
That's what
Reporting
Sony was
put
saying.
The true number, around 400 once remote staff, and Sony support teams were counted, about half the studio. Sony's own framing confirmed the aim, most of the Destiny team, plus some of Marathon's. And inside that filing, the eliminated roles are listed under the internal codename for Marathon. The codename is Goliath. Bungie had named its comeback project after the giant famous for losing to a shepherd boy named David. The titles on the filing read like a game's credits being erased, line by line. The Goliath General Manager, the Goliath Engineering Director, the Senior Producer and Senior Art Producer, its Story Editor, and its Creative, Art and Test Leads. The General Manager role matches Scott Taylor, who according to his own public profile, had run Marathon in that capacity since March 2019, 4 years before the game was announced. One more title sits in that filing, Chief Vision Officer. The names are redacted, so no document confirms who it was, but Bungie has had exactly one Chief Vision Officer, and reporting across the industry reached the same conclusion. Jason Jones, the man who programmed the original Marathon in 1994, appears to have been cut from the company he co-founded in a layoff filed under his own game's codename. The letter announcing all of this to staff came from Herman Hulst, and it contains a sentence that belongs in a museum. Marathon remains an important part of our portfolio, and we will continue to support the team as they build on the strong foundation established in Season 1 and 2. The strong foundation of Seasons 1 and 2 was the collapse you just watched, and it was being cited as the reason.
They say Season 1 and 2. I wonder if they're under some sort of financial obligation to just deliver that, and once it's done, they're going to cut support. Because that's what happened with Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League. Like, they had a financial obligation to deliver on the first year of content up to Deathstroke because they promised it with the most expensive edition. So, and then once that was done, they said, okay, that's it. So, that could be a reason. But, yeah.
For optimism, in the letter cutting the people who built it. The layoffs also happened to land on the same day GTA 6 pre-orders opened, the one day the entire gaming press was guaranteed to be looking somewhere else. The cuts reached everywhere. Lars Bakken, a Marathon design lead who had been at Bungie for 20 years and 9 months, across Halo 3, Reach and both Destinies, retired from the industry entirely. One laid-off sound designer posted his own goodbye as a list of everything in Marathon he had built. The dropships, the doors, the barriers, the graffiti, and the elevators. A former Bungie developer named Ben Platnick put the mood in the words that travelled furthest, and he said it plainly. Generational talent, just gone. These people were veterans from the Halo days. The damage was concrete enough to touch even the funeral arrangements, because Destiny 2's final planned hotfix was delayed on account of the people responsible for it having just been laid off. And underneath the human wreckage, the acquisitions machinery did exactly what it was built to do. Every unvested dollar of those employees' retention money evaporated with them, which, in plain terms, means Sony never had to pay it. The pool that had been sold to the world as proof Sony wanted to keep Bungie's people together was, mechanically, a discount that grew with every person cut. Firing half the studio did not just shrink payroll, it shrank the real price of the acquisition. Inside the Marathon community.
Dude, it's literally what Michael said from GTA. Go to college, and then you can rip people off legally. Holy shit, man. They purposely targeted the senior staff so they wouldn't have to pay them out. That is a next level of evil, man.
The defense died that day. The people who had spent months being dismissed as doomers were suddenly just called right, and the loudest voices turned on leadership itself. July began with an ending. On July 8th, Christopher Barrett settled his lawsuit against Bungie and Sony, terms undisclosed, with one visible concession. His name was added to Marathon's credits as its original game director. The man whose dream started this story now exists in it as a line of text in the credits of a game he publicly does not recognise. A week later, the internet noticed Marathon had a new general manager because Bungie never announced one. He was spotted on LinkedIn. Joshua Dean, a Bungie veteran whose recent career ran through publishing, marketing strategy, and franchise planning, rather than game development. After 3 years of churn at the top of the game's design leadership, the studio's answer was to hand its only live game to product management. And then came Friday, July 17th. Joe Ziegler posted that it would be his last day at Bungie, 4 months and 12 days after launching the most expensive project in the studio's history. The game director was heading, in his own words, to something new, somewhere else. He handed Marathon to his assistant director, Del Chafe III, alongside creative director Julia Nardin, and thanked the community warmly on his way out. The problem was the roadmap he left on the wall. Several of the biggest promises from his own Save Marathon plan had not shipped yet, which meant the man explaining Marathon's future was gone before several stops on it arrived. Bungie was down to one game in active service.
And they're just like cut in the top leadership.
And the person who aimed it just left the building.
Well, Sony
the community's eulogy was not kind. In the dominant telling on the subreddit, Ziegler was the director who came in, turned Marathon into a hero shooter, and left before paying for it. Fingers started to point the blame higher up the Bungie chain, at a leadership pipeline that had now burned through 2 directors.
Just look at this. It's freaking management. Everyone below the line was telling them, hey, this is what you guys gotta do. This is what you gotta change. They're like, nope, you are all wrong, and we're gonna prove it. We're gonna release this $200 million project, and all of you are gonna be wrong. We are right. We are in leadership. So, by the way, the game is about 6,000 players right now. We are going to have to, unfortunately, lay off a bunch of you, which means you're not going to get that money that you were promised through the acquisition. We're sorry. Dude, I don't... How do you screw up this bad? Like, I just feel like this was self-sabotage at this point, because there is no way someone could be this egotistical and this dumb over so many years. Like, it's inconceivable. Like, did they just want to destroy this company from the inside out? Did they just not like their job and they just wanted to, like, get out with a, like, severance or something? It seems that way.
2 studio heads, a chief executive, and a general manager in under 2 years. 4 days after Ziegler walked, the thing everyone had begged for finally arrived. On July 21st, Vault Breaker went live, Marathon's first fully PvE mode, no rival crews at all. A 2-week experiment where players fight the machines instead of each other and bank persistent upgrades instead of extracting loot. The effect on the player count was immediate.
Well, it's not persistent rewards. It's rewards that are isolated to that specific mode. It's only for the roguelike mode. You would get the red gems, and then you would use that, or basically redstone from Minecraft. And then you would use that to gain more equipment, and then you would just keep using that until finally you got the ability to fight the compiler, and then, yeah, that's kind of it. Like I said, the whole reason that I played the mode is thinking that I can get lore documents, and you don't get that. Really sucks.
Concurrents jumped to over 14,800, more than double the week before, the busiest marathon had been since the free week. When solo players reported the mode was tuned for trios, Bungie shipped a solo queue within 2 days, the fastest the studio had ever responded to anything. At the end of the window, Bungie extended the mode 2 more weeks to August 18th to gather more data. Here is what the warnings look like when they finally come true. The PvE mode that developers had begged for since around 2020 arrived in July 2026, 5 years after the first internal plea, 3 weeks after half
Who
the
knew
studio
giving
was
players
cut.
what they wanted would have been a
It came
good
stamped
thing.
as a temporary experiment. Every rescue marathon ever got arrived like this. Late, temporary, or already conceded in advance, and each one left the numbers lower than the rescue before it. Vaultbreaker even found the exact customer marathon had been invented to find players who admitted they did not like extraction shooters at all, and had bought the game purely for this mode, asking Bungie to make it permanent. And still the store page would not turn positive. Across the Vaultbreaker window, recent review sentiment fell, from about 76% positive in the low traffic weeks before it, to 66% during it, dragged down by returning veterans who found solo play undertuned and the whole thing time limited by design. The mode everyone wanted could triple the players and still not stop the bleeding, because what players wanted kept arriving with an expiration date printed on it. By then the community had begun trying to rescue the game themselves, and the
Not only did it have an expiration date, but as I stated, they would literally create a mode and they would just have these artificial barriers implemented in order to prevent them from ever being as good as they should be. Like if they put lore documents, the ability for you to extract with your equipment, bring it into the single player even, like just keep it limited to like non-legendary gear, like the gold items, just keep it as max to purple, it would have been good. But of course their hubris got the better of them. They have all, I don't know what the fuck they're thinking at this point. I would have been like, hey guys, people are enjoying this mode, let's just go full into this mode and then have players get equipment that they can bring into the core P versus P mode. Like you still, like, I think that would have been a great idea. Make it rare, but you can get purple gear and you can bring it into the single player if you, the core game if you want. But, you know, I'm just thinking for the player enjoyment factor, what do I know?
The attempt turned into farce. A fan organised a revival week, urging
I remember
lapsed
that.
players to log in together.
The game is
Pump
not
the
dead!
numbers, insisting
Revival
publicly
week!
that the game
That's
was
what
not
revival
dead.
means!
The posts promoting it were removed by Marathon's own subreddit moderators.
Because it proves that the
same
game was
moderators
dead.
Who had spent months removing the biggest threads about the collapse.
It's
No
bait for the
explanation was
marathon.
given. Outside
It's bait for the marathonites. Dude. Oh my god, that made it.
the fan bubble, people were now posting Marathon's record low player counts every single morning, like a weather report, which left the main subreddit to finally hold the funeral itself. One member wrote an open post to the community, asking where everyone went and begging them to come play. Nearly 1,000 replies came back, mostly polite, mostly long, and mostly explaining in detail why they had stopped. One reply described a 46-year-old player who reached level 45 without ever once extracting successfully and quit 3 weeks before the PvE mode arrived. He was, in essence, the audience Marathon needed, and the audience Marathon spent 6 years failing to
Dude,
serve.
imagine reaching that
Stack
level and
those
never
5 months end
extracting
to end,
once?
and the week-by-week
What
record
the
stops
fuck?
being the
What were you
interesting question.
doing?
The numbers were never really the problem. The numbers were the diagnosis, and they all diagnosed the same disease. This game was aimed at people who do not exist. Look at who actually showed up. The launch overlap said almost every buyer was already a Destiny player, the audience Bungie owned before spending $250 million to find a new one. The Extraction faithful stayed in the games they already lived in, exactly as predicted, a problem Ark Raiders made permanent by
It's also the idea they did find players that they wanted. The problem is they were the top 1% of players. And the problem with those players is that they will immediately jump ship back to the game that they're more familiar with. Like I believe Shroud was like one of the biggest offenders of this game, but guess what? He left. Like, a lot of people would watch the content, but they wouldn't play the game because they would see the players like him playing the game. They'd be like, I can't compete with these players. These are people who are doing like 180 shotgun blast to the face just because they heard like a little crease sound and they knew exactly how to shoot the person in the head immediately. Like, you can't compete with players like that, and they immediately say, yeah, I'm not playing this game. I know exactly what's going to happen, and it's just going to be a waste of my time. And at the end of the day, this game just doesn't cater to enough players to ensure that they're going to have a stable environment. They're going to be into a match with someone with a high-tech sniper rifle. Like, this is something he hasn't brought up yet, but the sniper rifle in the game was incredibly broken. You can literally snipe someone across the map from Dire Marsh using a thermal visor. I did it. Like, it was literally from the biotech researcher all the way to the, I believe, the farm area where the protein farms. I went to the roof, saw the guy, took out the rifle with the thermal scope. I could see them because the thermal scope, boom, dead. Easy. Like, one headshot and that's it. He lost everything. And it wasn't even a matter to get their gear. It was just like, that's what people did. They would troll other people with some of the most powerful items in the game. Shotguns, one shot, you're dead. It didn't matter if you had legendary gold shields or no shield at all. It was literally 2 shots, you're dead. So it was incredibly unbalanced. They kept trying to go back and forth with the shotgun, with the sniper rifle, with everything, and it just didn't work.
Soaring to dominance of the extraction genre across those same months. And when a truly new crowd finally touched Marathon during the free week,
they went to the
it
better
delivered
option.
The coldest verdict on the store page and left before the second run. There was no vast middle audience, casual enough to be new, hardcore enough to enjoy being hunted, patient enough to lose everything on a schedule. And the people still playing. The defenders are largely genre veterans, and here is the sad part. They mostly agree with the critics. They praise the gun feel, the art, the audio, the craft layer that never stopped being excellent, and they concede the trios problem, the seasonal wipe problem, the emptiness. Defenders and critics agree on what is wrong with Marathon. They only disagree on whether it is worth enduring.
The other thing is that these very, very skilled players, they enjoyed hunting down players like below my skill level. Like, I could hold my own, but I would ultimately get decimated by these players. But the people who were even below my skill level, they were the primary target for a lot of these players. They would rush the spawn point because the spawn points were always the same, and they would just decimate these players. They would purposely go into the first map, go into the area they knew they were going to spawn, and just wipe them out. Not for gear, just for the lulz. And guess what? When you wipe out enough of those players, guess who's left? Players like me. And then when players like me leave, guess who's left? Only players like Shroud. And those are the players they don't want to fight against. Like, this is something that opened my eyes to it when I played Overwatch. People would literally buy 5-6 copies of Overwatch, and this was inconceivable to me. But they would buy multiple copies of Overwatch just to play Smurf accounts. To play against low-level players to make themselves feel better. And to me, that is one of the most pathetic things I can imagine. Like, I can understand if you don't want to do it because you don't want to affect your score in ranked play, but there's player matches you can go into. They purposely buy smaller ranked accounts or brand new accounts, and then they'll play that just to play with players who are below or vastly below their skill level to make themselves feel better. And then literally, then there's also the other things they do. They will buy multiple accounts just to cheat. They'll get like aimbots and stuff like that, again, just to screw up with other players. Not because they're doing it they're bad at the game. These are really good players, unless you're the people who watch like Flats, where he watches cheaters and he's just like able to pick them out very easily. But there are good players who just, want to punk with other players. And that's what the Marathon devolved into. Eventually, only the top 1% of players were left. They were fighting other top 1% of players, and they don't want that. They want to feel like gods. They want to clip. They want to create all this content to show that they are so vastly superior, not realizing that the players that they're fighting against literally cannot aim. They're like people who got out of like their shift at Walmart, Target. They just got out of building a house, and they just want to play for a few minutes, and then they get completely bodied by someone who spends 10 hours a day on aim training on PC. So yeah, when you're left with those players, they get fed up of it and then they leave as well. And then what are you left with? Well, we just found out.
The community's early retort to every complaint, "This game is not for you," turned into a joke at its own expense, because the game really had turned out not to be for almost anyone. And the hardcore defenders who stayed were left praising the game inside an echo chamber, long since vacated by the mass market audience that a game this expensive needs to survive.
Yeah.
Underneath all the numbers sits the saddest version of this story. The mourning is not really for the extraction shooter that failed, but for the single-player marathon that will never exist. The strange, literate story game 3 decades of fans assumed would come back someday. Its one chance at resurrection was spent on this, which brings us...
That's what makes me so sad when I play this game. Like, I go through the Cryo Archive, I go through Perimeter, I go through the Pinwheel Base, and I'm just like thinking, this could have been one of the greatest single-player sci-fi games I've ever played. Like, when you learn about Strauss, when you learn about Durandal, when you learn about the scientists who tried to save everyone, who got slowly corrupted by the anomaly as they fused with the plant life, the tick mutation, all the cool stuff. And then you remember what you're playing. You're playing an extraction shooter where your entire goal is just to get a powerful gun so you can go into the Cryo Archive, kill the compiler, and just do it all over again. Like, it wanes on me. I'm like, this could have been one of the greatest sci-fi single-player experiences of all time, and they turned it into this. It's like, you see the potential, you see the amazing things they put into this. Like, even the blocky textures that you see in front of your screen, like, the way I see this is like an AI who thinks what humans would create in terms of architecture. Like, and then you're like, this is what they make. They make it efficient. They make it simplified. They make it into blocky things that are easy to move, but it has human elements, but it's not human. It's like with the shells. It's like what you described in AI of what a human should be without it ever knowing what a human is, and that's what it makes. That's how I kind of see this. It's like in the Backrooms theory, like describe a dog to something that doesn't know what a dog is, and then it tries to create it. Same thing. It's like we've seen that with AI art, like how it has weird things when you start to look at it. 6 fingers being the common thing, or their eyes are not placed in the right way, or like when you pull cheese from a pizza and somehow it's coming out of the crust instead of actually the cheese on the pizza, stuff like that. And that's kind of how I saw this, like AI creating human stuff without fully understanding how humans would create it in order to make it aesthetically pleasing to us. It's like, I know I'm going a bit of a tangent here, but it's like with modern architecture. You see how similar everything is because they all are about reselling the stuff. Like, it's not about making distinct buildings and homes, it's about reselling them at high volumes, so everything has to look the same. All the McDonald's have to look the same. There's no place, there's no coloration, there's no distinct elements to it. You can also see that with homes when you look at old Victorian homes. In fact, you should Google that. Look at old Victorian homes and compare it to modern day homes. Modern day homes are very sterile, similar, like the marathon architecture, but when you look at old homes that were built by hand in the most sophisticated way possible, you look at it and you see all those unique elements that made stuff feel alive and human. But this is what we got.
Back to the math lying in the old contract. Recall the 5% clause. The side project Bungie was once legally forbidden to staff beyond a sliver of the company is now, after everything, the only game Bungie has in active service.
And that's also the worst thing about this. This started off as a passion project. They weren't even allowed to talk about this thing. Like, this is news to me. Like, this was just something they were putting off on the side, saying, okay, we really want to do this. This is something we really want to create, and we're just going to keep it on the back burner until finally we're ready to show it. Usually games like that end up being incredible, but the pivot into this corporatized hero looter shooter stuff, like, as much fun as I had with Marathon, it was largely due to the shooting. Like, I love the shooting, I love the feel of killing these shells, like the impact of it, and get into like find these unique areas and saying, oh my god, there's an entire room that is just wall-to-wall monitors trying to showcase some semblance of humanity. Like, you see like water and you see like forest, and you're like, this is amazing. It's so dystopian sci-fi carnage that I love it. You see human cryo bodies everywhere, littered around, just tossed into the side, like freaking just like I toss my external hard drives or There's my PlayStation 3 right there, goated system, by the way. That would be literally just a body in the cryo archive, just like there, waiting to be unfrozen, unaware that he's dead. He's going to go into that pod and he's going to die. Oh, it's just all of that. It could have been so much better.
The 5% project became 100% of the studio's future. Nobody at Activision drafting that clause in 2010 could have imagined the math inverting like this.
Or maybe they
honestly,
did.
Nobody at Bungie seems to have imagined it either. That leaves one question, and it is the question Sony keeps...
I don't know. I think Activision saw the writing on the wall when they were working with them, and they were just like, you know what? Like, as much as I give Bobby Kotick crap, he is good when it comes to finances. And maybe he saw this. Like, based on everything we know about Bungie right now, they've had horrible management. Like, everyone on the top brass were making the wrong choices and forcing their employees to play ball. And even when they did, they still fucked them over. So I know this is like the only time I would even consider defending that guy, but maybe he did see something on the wall. Because remember with the Call of Duty deal, he knew that the franchise was on a downtrend. Yeah, it's still one of the most profitable franchises in the world, but he saw the line going down, and he got out when the getting was good, and he upsold Activision Blizzard to Microsoft. That's the thing. Like, that was a goated move. I was just like, whoa, that is like... This guy is smart. He knows what he's doing. He may be the devil incarnate when it comes to gaming. Almost worst things that you can imagine in monetization when it comes to gaming is because of him in some way, but I gotta give the guy credit. He did play the game and he got rewarded for it. But in this case, I'm almost certain, like, there has to be something there. And at the same time, judging by the trail of events we've been seeing, not only from this video, management was the problem. Like, there was a huge problem with that, and they probably just said, you know what, get the fuck out. You can keep Destiny, just do your own thing.
Answering in the strangest way available. If all of this is so visible, why will nobody in charge say it? On July 31st,
because it would cost them money.
2026, Sony published its quarterly earnings, and its entire public commentary on Marathon came to a single sentence. With the release of Season 2 in June, it read, Marathon has maintained a high user retention rate.
Wait, there's a singular line that Sony has about Marathon in its report after live service games like MLB The Show and Helldivers 2 to contribute to steady revenue. Dude, you're being beaten by Helldivers 2. Look, nothing against Helldivers 2. I've seen gameplay of the game. It doesn't interest me, but the game looks insanely fun. More fun than Marathon. But you're Bungie. You're getting decimated. How?
While also acquiring new users. Set that sentence next to the chart. The last full week before the report,
fucking lying.
Marathon's weekly peak was 6,552 players, 92% below the
Dude, if you were an investor, you just pull it up on your phone and be like...
2 days after Sony published the words, high user retention, the daily peak was even lower at 6,082. In mid-July, that retired Destiny 2, receiving no new content whatsoever, was still drawing 47,000 concurrent players on Steam. Marathon, the studio's entire...
I will say this about Destiny 2 though. Destiny 2 has over 10 years worth of content, even when you don't include the cut content. So it has so much more to do. Marathon doesn't. It has one mode. That's it. And yes, you can say Vault Breaker is a new mode. No, 2 modes. What does Destiny 2 have? Single player campaigns, raid mode, dungeons, P versus P, light raid mode where you go with 6 players and just kill a bunch of stuff, a bunch of environmental stuff you can do, teaming up with other players just to do random stuff, multiple classes where you can upgrade your character and have different weapons, many different biomes, way more than Marathon. Which game do you think people are going to play? You can, like, there was literally a deal where you could buy the entire content expansion, not including, like, Forsaken and the Red War, for $25. That is easily 100 hours worth of quality content. Even if you just play the campaign from start to finish, that's like, what, 25 hours of incredible boss fights, great new locations to explore, weapons to use, characters, different types of powers and abilities that can be used throughout the game, different enemies to fight, not just robots, but literal the Cabal, the Hive, the Vex, the Taken. What do you think people are going to buy?
Entire future was drawing 2,800. This is the pattern now, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. In March, Bungie promised in writing that it was in it for the long haul with Marathon. Years of steady improvements
because
ahead,
you spent
$3
$200
million
million on this.
Cut. The story plans for the next few years were announced in May, and the game director who would have to deliver them resigned 10 weeks later. Marathon's formal importance to the portfolio was reaffirmed inside the letter that cut its general manager. And the high user retention arrived 2 days ahead of a measly 4-digit daily peak. None of these people are stupid, and that is exactly the point.
Yeah.
Nobody inside this machine is permitted to say the obvious thing out loud, because the moment someone says it, the accounting has to follow. And after the accounting, more heads roll. Call it self-preservation, all the way up the org chart. So a game already written down to nothing gets called important, quarter after quarter, in statements that grow one sentence shorter each time. And to be completely fair, a serious case exists on the other side. Marathon's craft never stopped being excellent. The shooting, the audio, the art direction that survives even its scandal. The players still playing Marathon say versions of the same thing. The counter-argument has never been about the game's quality, which is precisely what makes this story so bleak. Nothing in the numbers. 5 months of them since launch shows a turnaround no matter what Sony or Bungie says publicly.
It's because it's cooked. You can't fix this. The game's foundational elements, the gameplay, systems, the overall execution, you can't fix it. Like with No Man's Sky, the reason they were able to turn it around because the foundational elements were there. Space exploration, finding new planets, discovering new things. Those were all key foundations to that game, like with Star Wars Battlefront 2. The shooting, the class-based combat, all of that was great. So they just had to revise some of the more lesser aspects of the game, like the monetization system, the progression system. For No Man's Sky, they refined the core principles of that game. Marathon, you can't. Like, you designed this game to be a P versus P extraction shooter. And no matter how you try to change that, that's what this game is. You try to add a P versus E mode, but guess what? You got in your own way because of the game's core aspects. You can't implement, even though I said implement the ability to bring weapons that you find in that game into the core extraction game, they can't do that because it will break the entire system. Like, I'm sure someone will probably comment that, but it would be fun, but they can't do it because it would break the meta. People who are more experienced with the game will go into the P versus E mode, completely trounce everything, take the high-end equipment and take it into the extraction mode. So all the stuff you put into this game is your own fault in a way that you can't change it. Like the core foundation, the aesthetic, the art style, the shooting is freaking good. The weapon design, a lot of the stuff in here is really good. Even the shell design, I know a lot of people hated it, but for me it grew on me because, like I said, it was the idea of this being AI trying to create human bodies and not fully understanding what a human is. But you can't fix this. You can't have a No Man's Sky revival unless you completely scrap this and do a Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn revival, which Sony's definitely not going to be on board with. I mean, look at what Sony's doing right now. Increased prices on PlayStation Plus and consoles, eliminating digital physical purchases entirely to have a monopoly on all digital purchases. Like, these guys understand that they're tight when it comes to budget. They already have the biggest live service flop of all time. Now the second biggest live service flop of all time. They have two. They've canceled multiple live service games, closed so many studios. Like, Xbox is doing bad, but Sony, I would argue, is doing way worse right now. Like, wow.
So where does that leave Marathon? Bungie has not killed it, and Sony keeps calling it important.
Because they have nothing
but
else.
The chart has its own opinion, because every rescue bump so far has settled back lower than the one before it. I deliberately held this video for months, waiting to see whether one of those rescues would catch, because Bungie's history of impossible comebacks had earned it that much respect.
Yeah, the Taken
Looking
King
at the
expansion.
data after every attempt, it is hard to see the light
And
at
the
the
Witch
end of the
Queen.
tunnel. And the strangest part is that the game has been telling that story itself, the whole time, in its own fiction. In Marathon's world, you are not really a person. You are a runner, an artificial body called a shell, deployed onto a dead colony by corporate sponsors.
You see, this is
Extract whatever
cool.
value is left
It should have
in
been
the
like this.
You fight under contract. When you fall, nothing stops, because the sponsor simply activates another shell and sends it back down. And on a fixed schedule, Everything a runner has gathered is wiped, and the extraction begins again as if none of it ever happened. Bungie wrote all of that as science fiction, years before any of this happened. And then, in the cruelest twist of fate, the studio lived it. Bungie's people were the runners, deployed by a corporate sponsor whose contract had priced their replacement in advance. Shells whose unvested value flowed back to the sponsor the moment they stopped running. And the studio's progress obeyed the same seasonal wipe its players did. Everything it built written down to zero on a fiscal calendar, while the platform that owned it turned to the next cycle. Even the codename obeyed the fiction. When the layoff paperwork needed to call Marathon something, the word it used was Goliath, the giant remembered for losing to a David. And fittingly, the David that Bungie's Goliath could never beat also starts with a D. Its name was Destiny. Marathon's path mirrors the way its own extraction runs end. It dropped into a hostile world, chasing a treasure its leadership swore was down there, an audience of millions that existed only in the pitch, and it kept searching long after its own developers called the map empty. The players it was chasing were never one map deeper. They were never there at all, and if you want to know how Destiny itself died, killed by a $3.6 billion lie, that story is in the middle of your screen. Subscribe if you'd like to see more gaming documentaries. Big thanks to the Patreons and YouTube members that keep this channel alive. To support these handcrafted documentaries, check the links in the description. See you in the next video.
So yeah, that was an incredible video. He completely went in depth about everything. So yeah, I think Marathon is just not going to make a revival. I do play every new update that comes, but every time a new update comes, I come through the same issues over and over. What's the point if I'm just going to lose everything immediately? What's the point of even playing when there's no even direction for this game? Like, as far as I can tell, the whole focus of this was Durandal and him trying to escape the end of the universe to become a god. But what exactly is happening here? You fight the compiler, and then there's no direction afterwards. You constantly need to push the franchise towards something, and right now we don't really know where that is. And considering that they said only season 1 and 2, is this going to be like just kind of the end? I mean, there is a theory that this is an alternative timeline similar to what happened in Marathon Infinity, but we still don't have any confirmation of that. I mean, it would have been cool if this was a single player game and then you were going through the cryo archive with your 2 teammates. It could have been like a Destiny raid situation where you get just 2 people to walk through it, like, you know, any of the, well, not a raid, like a dungeon, and then you see someone in the background like shooting up the place, killing everything, and they're just like destroying everything. You're like, what the fuck, who is that? And then it would have been such a cool reveal. I'm just spitballing ideas, but every time I think about Marathon, I just think about what is and what could have been. But tell me what you think in the comments below. This is, oh wow, 2 hours long, but really well done. Go sub to his channel. I liked his video. He does incredible documentaries. Wish I could support him further, but I can't. Money is tight. But that's it from me. Have a good day.